All righty. Welcome to the Tuesday, January 13th, 2026 regular closed session meeting of the East Bay Mud Board of Directors. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan,
Present.
Director Gomez,
Here.
Director Katz is en route, Director Lewis,
Here?
Director Odie,
Here.
Director Smith,
Present.
President Young.
I am here. Okay, do we have, I don't have any cards. Do we have anyone online for public comment?
No online public comment.
Okay, no cards, so we will proceed to our Brown Act briefing. Just presentation on the board's ethics policy and updates to the Brown Act and ethics laws from our general counsel.
Yes, good morning, President Young and members of the board. I am here this morning with Assistant General Counsel Lourdes Matthew to provide our annual Brown Act presentation. That is a requirement of Board Resolution number 3341404, adopted in March of 2004, which states, Policy 6.04 shall be annually reviewed by the Board of Directors, together with a review of the Ralph M. Brown Act at the first meeting of the board in each calendar year or as soon thereafter as practicable.
It's a lot of slides. Keeping in mind that we can read.
We will try to get through this as quickly as possible. And so this morning, when we go over the Brown Act, or over our presentation, we're going to focus only on the changes and remind the board of the changes that were made to the board ethics policy by the board last year in August. And then we're going to talk about revisions to the Brown Act this year that were made by Senate Bill 707. And we are not actually going to talk about changes to ethics laws, Section 1090, and the Political Reform Act in the interest of time. There were a couple of amendments to the Political Reform Act regarding Form 700 reporting requirements that I will inform you about in a separate memorandum.
Thank you.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, let's move ahead a couple slides. Next slide, please. Okay, no more? Thank you. So, starting with our review of Board Ethics Policy 6.04, the purpose of the policy is to promote awareness of ethics, integrity, and fidelity as critical elements in board members' conduct and in achievement of the EBMUD mission. The policy itself is based on numerous laws, including the California Constitution, the Political Reform Act, Section 1090, the Penal Code, the Elections Code, and the MUD Act, and it also reflects various policy decisions of the board in furthering ethics and transparency. And many of those policy decisions were implemented in last year's revisions to the ethics policy. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So this slide shows the chapters of or the sections of Policy 6.04 as they existed last year before they were modified in August by the board. The sections in blue show those sections that were modified, and the sections that are crossed out showed those sections of the policy that were removed and moved to separate policies or to the governance manual. So board member general manager relationship section was removed and included in the governance manual. Improper activities and the reporting of such activities, protection of whistleblowers, was removed, and it is now a separate policy 6.16, protection of whistleblowers. And director's compensation and expense reimbursement was removed, and policy 4.14 was revised accordingly. Just quickly, next slide, please. Going through the actual revisions that are in the existing policy. Fair and open processes involving the public replaces the adverb fully with the imperative must to clarify that board member compliance with Brown Act is mandatory. And it added contractors to the list of entities about which the board must disclose ex parte communications relating to board matters in which the board is performing an adjudicatory or quasi-judicial role. The section on fair and equal treatment added a requirement that board members immediately report an alleged violation of the EEO policy to the general manager, or if the complaint is against the general manager, to the general counsel. Next slide, please. Use of confidential information was updated to clarify that board members must maintain the confidentiality of both written and oral information received at closed session. And exercise responsible fiscal management was revised to clarify the role of Finance Admin Committee in selecting an external independent auditor. Next slide, please. And finally, violations of ethics policy section was modified to add language to clarify that any board member has the right to request that a perceived violation of 6.04 be placed on the regular board meeting agenda for determination and discussion. I should note, should any of you have any questions during this presentation, feel free to ask them. We'll have a questions period at the end. Additionally, if your questions are really specific to a personal situation, I would advise you to just ask me those questions offline. Okay, let's turn now to revisions to the Ralph M. Brown Act under Senate Bill 707. And I will state that SB 707 has made some of the most significant revisions to the Brown Act in many years, perhaps decades. And we're going to focus on the primary changes and won't cover those changes that don't apply to EBMUD as a public entity. So I think the changes can be grouped into four categories. There are significant new requirements to encourage and accommodate public participation at meetings. Rules regarding remote board member attendance at meetings have been expanded, clarified, and refined. Board member social media use prohibitions are now permanent. They were otherwise set to sunset this year. And expansion of open session reporting requirements for executive compensation actions have been included. Many of the new requirements we're going to be discussing apply to only eligible legislative bodies, and this board of director is an eligible legislative body under SB 707. An eligible legislative body includes a board of directors of a special district that has an internet website and has over 1,000 full-time employees or annual revenues that exceed $400 million. Next slide, please. So first we want to talk about remote access to public meetings. Under SB 707, the public must be provided access to all meetings via a two-way telephonic service or a two-way audio-visual platform. And an audio-visual platform means an online platform that provides participants with the ability to participate in a meeting both via an interactive video conference and a two-way telephonic service. And a two-way telephonic service means a telephone service that does not require internet access and allows participants to dial a telephone number to listen and verbally participate. So in other words, folks who are sitting at home who have only a landline must be able to dial into our meetings to participate in those meetings. Access means the public must be able to provide public comment through the remote platform. And we are already complying with really these provisions of SB 707. A new requirement under SB 707 is that upon disruption of a meeting due to loss of internet or telephonic service, the board must recess and may not reconvene for at least 1 hour. That means that if we lose internet service here in the building, but we're able to reestablish it after 10 minutes, we still have to wait a full hour before we can reconvene. The board, we have to make a good faith attempt to restore service. The Brown Act says, the SB 707 says we can meet in closed session during that recess. However, my understanding is that would only apply to those public agencies that don't have a separately noticed closed session, since we specifically notice our closed session for one.
And Derek, does this apply to regular meetings or to regular meetings and special meetings?
So this would apply to, yes, all meetings.
All meetings.
All meetings of the eligible legislative body. of
So-
which this board-
Maybe this is a little bit too specific, but in the event of an earthquake where there's broad disruption of internet service and potentially telephone service of the type that's required by the Brown Act, and we have to meet.
So your question implicates a couple of exceptions, which I'll discuss after this.
A what session?
A couple of exceptions.
Oh,
which
okay,
I will
all right,
discuss after
okay,
this
thank
slide,
you.
so.
I have a question on item 2. Is there any definition about a loss of service? You know, sometimes there is a glitch and everybody observes that it's just half a second and then things proceed. Is there emphasis on the disruption of meeting that you resolve that issue with? Or is there another portion of the statute that addresses what is a loss within the meaning of that section?
I would say that's unclear. I would say, momentary screen freeze, I would not advise that that's a disruption in service. However, if it drops off completely, I would say that is a disruption in service. And of course, it is only a disruption of service that we or the general public are subject to, not if someone has a home disruption of service. So in other words, we're not required to stop meetings, recess meetings, if someone at homes who's in the middle of a public comment loses internet connectivity.
But if the Zoom freezes and then we have to restart it and then nobody's there in the meeting when we come back, probably a
We
disruption.
need to wait 1 hour, yes.
Director Odie?
So a couple of questions. I think Director had, or President Young had a question, but so does this include committee meetings also?
So committee meetings are technically not eligible subsidiary bodies under SB 707. So I would say that no.
Okay, and then I assume somehow the public's going to be notified of this because it's going to be a change, but and I also see the effective date, which, not to skip ahead, but, I mean, we should be good because we already do this today, right?
It's true that we normally follow the technical aspects of 707 today. We do not, fortunately have not had too many problems with disruption of service, but we don't follow the 1 hour rule right now.
Okay.
But the public will be provided notice in answer to your question because the board will be required to adopt a policy addressing disruptions of service. And that has to be done by July 1st, 2026. And I'll note that if after an hour service can't be restored, the board can continue with the meeting, but you have to, but via roll call vote, that continuing the meeting without remote access is in the interests of the public. So,
Okay, thank you.
next slide, please. So there are some exceptions to this remote public access requirement. If adequate telephonic or internet service is not operational at the meeting location, it's unclear exactly what that means, but for instance, in an earthquake, where this building is otherwise accessible, but there is simply no internet service within the county or within our service area, that may apply. That is unclear. But it doesn't apply to disruptions. So it really is talking about a permanent non-operation of the internet service. To attend a judicial or administrative proceeding in which the district is a party, and again, that's if the quorum of the governing body, the quorum of the board, were to somehow attend a judicial proceeding, or to inspect real or personal property, provided the agenda is limited to inspection, to meet with federal or state officials to discuss legislation or regulations within the jurisdiction of the officials, to meet at a district facility for the purpose of touring the facility. So for instance, each year the board does a facilities tour. The remote access requirement would not apply to those tours. And then emergency meetings authorized by the Brown Act. And an emergency meeting is a meeting that may be noticed on less than 24 hours notice. And under the Brown Act, it's defined as an emergency, which is defined as a work stoppage, crippling activity, or other activity that severely impairs public health, safety, or both, as determined by a majority of the members of the legislative body, or a dire emergency which shall be defined as a crippling disaster, mass destruction, terrorist act, or threatened terrorist activity that poses peril so immediate and significant that requiring a legislative body to provide 1 hour notice before holding the meeting under this section may endanger the public health, safety, or both, as determined by the majority of the members of the legislative body. So in other words, under the emergency meetings exception, if this board is empowered to hold a meeting on less than 24 hours notice, then that meeting does not have to provide for remote access. Of course, if we're able to, we would always advise in the interest of transparency that we do so, but it would not be a legal requirement. Next slide, please. No, this is the right slide, thank you. We talked, I believe, last year in 2022 about the fact that the Brown Act had been authorized to remove disruptive members of the public from a meeting, and the Brown Act defines what disruption is, and it specified a procedure for removing a disruptive member of the public. SB 707 extends that authority to apply to members of the public appearing via a remote platform. So that means that if the disruption is visual, you can ask the secretary to disable the camera, and if it's audio, the microphone may be disabled, or you can simply cut the person off altogether. And so Ms. Matthew has the next section, so I'll let you up.
Good morning, President Young and members of the board. I am going to cover provisions of SB 707 pertaining to enhanced public outreach, as well as duties for translation and interpretation of meetings and agendas. So as Derek had mentioned, these pertain to eligible legislative bodies. And as Derek mentioned, the district is included in that definition. And also, I want you to note that these provisions take effect July 1st, 2026, so we have a little bit of time, to get these measures in place. So what are those measures for improving public outreach? SB 707 says an eligible legislative body shall take the following actions to encourage residents, including those in underrepresented communities and non-English speaking communities. So the first of those efforts is to have in place a system for electronically accepting and fulfilling requests for meeting agendas and documents pursuant to section 54954.1 through,
Sorry, if you could take one. Yeah, thank you.
through email or through an integrated agenda management platform. An integrated agenda management platform, of course, isn't defined in the statute, but what it must include is information as to how to make a request using the system, and that.
Sorry, Ordaz, one more thing. As you move, can you let the secretary know to move next slide? So we need to go to the next slide.
Sure, next slide, please. Sorry. Okay, great, thank you. The information has to include how to make a request, and the information must be accessible through a prominent direct link posted on the primary internet website homepage of the district. And if you're curious, 54954.1 provides basically that any person may request a copy of the agenda or a copy of all documents constituting the agenda packet of any meeting of the legislative body. Any questions there? Okay. Next slide, please. The next efforts that legislative bodies must make would be to create and maintain an accessible internet webpage dedicated to public meetings that includes or provides a link to all of the following information, which is a general explanation of the public meeting process, an explanation of the procedures for a member of the public to provide in-person or remote oral public comment during a public meeting, or to submit written public comments. We must also provide information that is a calendar of all public meeting dates with calendar listings that include the date, time, and location of each meeting, and the agenda must be posted online. According to Secretary's office, we are already providing items 1, 2, and 4, and are working on providing a calendar to satisfy that third requirement.
Ordaz,
Slide,
can I
please.
one clarification? We actually are partly meeting item 3. A calendar is just a list of the meetings and the dates, regular meetings, committee meetings. It would not include workshops, but the meetings that we have currently.
Like special workshops.
Correct.
Next slide, please, Risha. All right, and then the third requirement for improving outreach is to make reasonable efforts, sorry, before I go ahead.
A little out of order, but before we move off the languages, does SB 707 specify what language and/or dialects for which we're required to provide translations of copies or services?
I will get to that in a subsequent slide. And I actually have a whole section on that. So
Okay.
if I can just get through this one section. Okay,
No
so.
problem. I can wait, thanks.
Okay, great. So the third kind of measures for improving outreach is to make reasonable efforts as determined by the legislative body to invite groups that don't traditionally participate in public meetings. And the statute provides, examples of what those groups might be, and they include media organizations that provide news coverage in the jurisdiction of the legislative body, including those that serve non-English speaking communities, and also good government, civil rights, civic engagement, neighborhood and community group organizations, or similar organization in the agency's jurisdiction, including non-English speaking communities.
Sorry, are we going to talk about that last phrase a bit?
Including non-English speaking communities? Yes, yeah. So,
Because we can provide the outreach, but not the participation.
yes, and so that leads in perfectly to the next section. But before I get to the next section, I just want to point out that within the statute, eligible legislative bodies have broad discretion for their choice of reasonable efforts that they may undertake to kind of implement these three requirements that I just talked about. And also, there's an express provision that no action shall be commenced or maintained against an eligible legislative body arising from, any failure to provide public information to any specific group pursuant to this section. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. All right, so meetings and how to make meetings more accessible. SB 707 provides that a legislative body shall reasonably assist members of the public who wish to translate a public meeting into any language or wish to receive interpretation provided by another member of the public, so long as the interpretation is not disruptive to the meeting. Next slide, please. So what does this mean? Statute tells us that some of the measures and some assistance that a legislative body can provide would be, one, arranging space for one or more interpreters at the meeting location, allowing extra time during the meeting for interpretation to occur. And, a quick kind of rule of thumb would be to allow to perhaps double the time for public comment if public comment needs to be translated or interpreted to up to 6 minutes. And ensure that participants may utilize their personal equipment or reasonably access facilities for participants to access commercially available interpretation services. And just kind of thinking what that might look like. Perhaps ensure that members of the public who attend our board meetings have access to internet so that they may access whatever translation app that they have on their personal devices.
I can't see our Zoom controls here, but do we have closed captioning available in certain languages?
So Zoom allows, we have closed captioning here in English, but Zoom allows you to change the language for the closed caption.
So but you can enable or disable that.
Yes.
We have that enabled.
I need to confirm that, but the user can change the closed captioning. They can change it to
Right.
the language of their choice.
If an entity were to want to provide an interpreter through Zoom, can we enable global, there's at the bottom of the Zoom screen, there's a globe icon that enables simultaneous interpretation in different languages. Is that something that we would, and then basically what happens then is that all users need to select their language. So I know we've talked about this before, not in the context of requirements, which these are pretty minimal, actually, of what we are doing to increase language access for the dominant, at least for the dominant language groups in our service area.
So staff is researching all of the requirements in SB 707 to meet the translation and the participation requirements. And so that's something.
Yeah, so I'm saying the
we're looking into as well.
participation requirements are lighter than, I mean, there's no obligation to provide interpretation or
Right.
translation.
But to make it as easy as possible for people to participate if English is not their first language. Yes, I'm documenting what you just talked about.
Okay.
So I'll talk to staff about that.
Yeah.
I have a question. If someone wants to actually be in person, wants us to accommodate translation, is there any guidance on how much time they have to give us with the request or what constitutes a reasonable period for the request?
So SB 707 doesn't provide that, but I believe that maybe is something we can incorporate in our meeting notices, and include a requirement that if there is, there is need for, interpretation services, that, that the request be made within a time certain.
It's already listed at the bottom of our agenda under the accessibility notice on our regular and committee meeting agendas, that they contact our office and give us notice if they need ADA accessibility, if that's language or if that's
And how much
physical.
time is
Yes.
that?
Beg pardon, it's, I believe, it's on our agenda. I think I said
You can-
48
you
hours.
can tell me later.
Yeah.
But if someone brings an interpreter,
But-
they should be allowed
Yeah.
a full amount of time.
Yeah, if somebody has an interpreter with them, and, I mean, it's up to the president of the board has discretion to, provide that in any case.
Right, right. Next slide, please. Thank you. As President Young has just mentioned, these provisions do not require the eligible legislative body to provide interpretation of any public meeting, but it is within its discretion to do so. And then, of course, a legislative body is not responsible for the content or accuracy of any interpretation facilitated, assisted with, or provided, and no action may be commenced or maintained against a legislative body arising from the content of any interpretation facilitated, assisted, or provided. Okay, so that, next slide, please. So those are the provisions regarding the translation of meetings, and then next we have the obligations under SB 707 to translate agendas. And unlike meetings, there is a duty to translate agendas into all applicable languages, within the jurisdiction of the eligible legislative body. The requirements have to be posted in accordance with 54954.2, meaning each translation shall include instructions in the applicable language describing how to join the meeting by telephone or internet-based service option, including any requirements for registration of public comment, and shall be accessible through a prominent direct link posted on the homepage. The other requirements are that the legislative body shall make available a physical location that is freely accessible to the public in reasonable proximity to the physical location in which the regular agenda is being posted, and that translations are posted accordingly in that same general area. What's also interesting is that a public agency must also allow for physical space where the agendas are posted to allow members of the public to post additional translations of the agenda in that location. An eligible legislative body shall not be responsible for the content or accuracy of the translation. And again, no action shall be commenced or maintained arising from the content, accuracy, posting, or removal of any translation. And the term agenda, for purposes of these provisions, do not include the agenda packet.
What considerations are there for allowing members of the public to post at our location?
Yeah, so that is something that we have to do. They have to post, the legislative bodies shall permit members of the public to post their translated agenda. So if they decide on their own to translate an agenda, perhaps in a language that isn't a quote-unquote applicable language, which I'm getting to, we have to allow for a physical location for them to post that.
Yeah, I meant like, are there guidelines or processes that you're thinking about, because this would imply or suggest either a direct interaction with district property with a member of the public or activities for district staff to facilitate performance of the law. So have we gotten to that in terms of implementation yet?
So SB 707 doesn't have those kind of prescriptive guidance, and there are no regulations, as far as I know, that kind of prescribe. What we could do is reasonably ascertain what it is our obligation is, which is to allow for physical space, and start from there.
Members of the public or other organizations who decide to provide their own interpretation, are they required to provide information on the interpretation as to who they are and how they can be contacted? Do they have to, are they required to identify?
Who's making the
themselves?
translation?
Yeah, who's providing this and posting this translation?
There isn't any requirement in SB 707 that would require identity of who's making the translation or even the credibility of the translation. Again, these provisions provide that the legislative body is not responsible for the content or accuracy of the translation provided.
Is that something that we potentially at least have the leeway to include in any additional procedures or whatever we might?
Yeah, I think so. I think, you could, if we're providing a translated agenda, we can provide a reference as to who did the translation.
But also if they post it, if we provide a room and they can post it physically,
Yeah.
we require anything that's posted to include identification.
Right. Okay, next slide, please.
I'm sorry, just clarifying the question, can we in our procedure include a requirement that if somebody posts a translation that they identify the organization or the
Identify
individual?
organization, person.
Or just the source.
We could
the
ask,
source
yeah.
of the
Source.
translation.
We could recommend, but
Just
there
asking,
isn't,
do we have the ability to include those kind of requirements at this level?
I think we could recommend that in the notice that, the space, in the space, members of the public are free to include, translations. And we ask, that you provide the source. But there isn't anything in SB 707 that requires that any.
But it doesn't appear that we would be contravening 707 or doing anything to discourage the
Right.
public. Okay.
Right. So SB 707 has, defines applicable language and how to determine applicable language. And the statute, requires that an agency
Can you
look
move to the next slide, please?
Sorry. So the statute requires that an agency look to the most recent American Community Survey, which is basically the census data, of languages spoken jointly by 20% or more of the applicable population, provided that 20% of that population speaks the language in that city or county, speaks English less than very well. And for purposes of a special district, the applicable population could be either the population of the county with the greatest population within the boundaries of the special district, or the population of the service area of the special district, if the special district has that data to determine what languages are spoken. So in Alameda County is our biggest, is our more populous county in which the district is located. And in Alameda County recognizes 4 languages that would fit within the definition of applicable language, and they are Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Tagalog.
Which Chinese?
which Chinese, I think, is it either?
Mandarin.
It's Mandarin,
It's
okay.
actually all Chinese, written language is the same, so
No,
there's,
but the spoken language is different. if it's-
okay, but we're talking about a written agenda, right?
But we're talking about
Not for an
interpretation
interpretation.
and
Interpretation.
translation. Interpretation is verbal.
And that concludes my portion of SB 707 for now, and I'll turn it back to,
Minimally required to do 3, and we could do 4 if we want.
yes. Any other questions?
Question about Contra Costa County, how different it might be from Alameda County?
Yeah, I think Contra Costa includes Spanish, Chinese, and Tagalog, but not Vietnamese. Okay, I'll turn it back to Derek.
So we would, though, presumably do the 4.
Yes.
Next slide, please. So we've been talking about public access to meetings, and I want to talk about SB 707's changes to board member remote access to meetings.
Actually, can I go back this one? And maybe this is a question more for Risha, but I know that it doesn't require the agenda packet, but assuming that our agenda packet is available to open in a browser and that you can then, 3-dot your way to getting to the translation
Yes.
that you want, right? Okay, that's all.
We're not there, but we have a translation tool. We're working with it to see how we're going to implement it with our documents. We want
Yeah,
to meet.
no, you can just use Google Translate. It could,
And understood.
you can use the browser's translation. We should be able to do that now.
But it does not translate, to my knowledge, it does not translate PDFs or packets as a
okay.
PDF. And so it would need to be either an HTML
Without
document
paying
or
for the-
Microsoft Word. Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions? Previous slide, please. That's right, okay. So turning to board member remote access under 707, I first want to lay a foundation through discussing traditional remote access. Under the Brown Act, any board member has long been able to appear at any meeting remotely, provided you follow these rules. At least a quorum of the board participates from a location within the service area, even if that participation is remotely. So in theory, all of you could participate remotely at any meeting as long as a quorum of you are participating remotely from within the service area. Each remote meeting location needs to be made accessible to the public. Each remote meeting location needs to be included in the meeting notice. The meeting notice is published at each location, remote location, in accordance with the Brown Act, meaning 72 hours for a regular meeting, 24 hours for a special meeting, et cetera. And as of July 1st, you would also need to post the translation of the meeting agenda. And then, of course, all votes taken at any meeting in which a board member appears remotely must be by roll call. So that's what we call traditional remote access, and it's long existed under the Brown Act. During COVID, the Brown Act was amended to allow for remote attendance at board meetings due to the COVID emergency, and then it was subsequently amended to kind of codify remote attendance for just cause and emergency circumstances, which is a remote attendance that would allow a board member to meet remotely without having to post the meeting notice or provide access. SB 707 clarifies a lot of these COVID and post-COVID rules, and first defining just caused remote access. If you'll recall, prior to this year, board members were allowed to meet for just cause or under emergency circumstances. Those have now been subsumed under the term just cause. And just cause is care of a child, parent, grandparent, grandchild, sibling, spouse, or domestic partner that requires the board member to participate remotely, a contagious illness that prevents the member from attending in person, a need related to a physical or mental condition. And I will note that Lourdes is going to come up and talk about disability accommodations, which is a more permanent accommodation for meeting remotely. So a physical or mental condition under just cause is really a temporary situation as we interpret it. Travel while on official business. Yep. Travel while on official business of the legislative body or another state or local agency.
So that voids the 3-day posting where you are
Yes.
requirement? So, okay,
If you are traveling on district business.
Right, got it.
You don't need to,
Got
yeah,
it.
for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to make sense, given that you'll know where you'll be and, but it could be possible that you're in a location that doesn't allow for public access for, under your travels, and so that's maybe one of the reasons why the Brown Act has that exception. An immunocompromised child, parent, grandparent, grandchild, sibling, spouse, or domestic partner of the member that requires the member to participate remotely. Any physical or family medical emergency that prevents the member from attending in person, or military service obligations, and those obligations must be pursuant to official orders that the member receives that they have to report for duty. So those are the exceptions, or those are the what constitute just cause for remote access. And there are new clarifications and limitations on the use of just cause for appearing remotely. The board member must notify the board at the earliest opportunity, including at the start of the meeting, and provide a general description of the circumstances requiring remote appearance. I will note that description does not require you to reveal a specific medical diagnosis or disability that would otherwise be exempt from disclosure under relevant laws such as HIPAA.
Can I just interrupt you for a second? I remember that I did actually have a doctor's note for a specific condition, and when I reported it, I was asked, is it a physical condition or is it a emotional condition? And I think that at one of the meetings you actually stated it was physical. So I just wanted you to know that I was really kind of uncomfortable with that. Because
Okay,
honestly, under HIPAA laws, that's not a question that should come up.
Yeah, and so the exact language is, this subdivision shall not be construed to require the board member to disclose any medical diagnosis or disability or any personal medical information that is otherwise exempt under existing law. I can't opine on whether stating the general nature would violate that, but you are required to state the general description of the circumstances requiring the remote appearance. The board member must appear on camera during the remote appearance, except in certain circumstances related to disability accommodations, which Lourdes will discuss. At least a quorum of the board must participate from a singular physical location within the service area. So if 4 board members cannot attend in person, then to attend a meeting in person at a singular physical location, such as this board member, then other board members cannot appear remotely for just cause.
So if 4 members of the board are doing the standard remote access clause and somebody asks for a just cause accommodation,
We would not be able to grant that
we
because
would
you are
not be able
not.
to grant it. That the prior following of the rules, as unlikely as it would be that would happen, overrules the ability to, takes precedence over providing a just cause accommodation.
That is correct.
Even if it's a disability accommodation?
So a disability accommodation, and Lourdes will discuss this too, counts as being present at a singular, counts as being at the physical location for all purposes.
Oh,
So that
Okay.
that remote appearance would not count against the
Okay.
requirement. So, a big change in SB 707, you'll recall that in the past when we've received requests for authority to appear remotely for just cause, the board first had to vote to amend the agenda to make the vote and then vote on the request itself. That is no longer a requirement. Now it is simply a one-way notification from the board member. I need to appear at this meeting for just cause. Here are the general circumstances, and the board does not need to take action in response to that.
unless it's not allowed because the regular remote meeting participation, so how does that get?
Correct. So then the president or someone would have to raise a point of order, or I probably would, if no board member raised a point of order, I would myself and just advise that the board member can't participate.
Okay.
The use of a just cause exception is limited to 5 meetings per year, And SB 707 clarifies that a meeting is basically all the meetings in a calendar day. So essentially 5 days per calendar year. And then the meeting minutes must identify the specific provision of Government Code Section 54953.8.3, 1 through 7 on the previous slide that the board member is relying on.
Okay, so they'll say the general condition be one, care of a child, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
These.
Yeah, so yes, exactly. So you, for instance, can say, I need to appear for a remote cause based on a need related to a physical or mental condition. You probably don't need to specify which one, whether it's physical or mental, but, as long as you're citing the language of the statute, and then that would be identified in the board minutes as the reason for your appearance remotely for just cause. And then, next slide, please. Yep. No, this is the correct slide. Okay. And then finally, in addition to just cause, the board may continue to appear remotely during a declared state or local emergency. And not a district emergency. This provision may only be used during a state of emergency, which is an emergency proclaimed by the governor, or a local emergency, which is an emergency proclaimed by a city, county, or city and county. Unlike for just cause remote appearances, the board does not need to provide a physical meeting location. In other words, the meeting can be entirely online, as we did during COVID. At the first board meeting, utilizing this provision, the board must vote to make the finding that, quote, as a result of the emergency, meeting in person would present imminent risk to the health or safety of attendees. So that could include a viral outbreak. It could include an earthquake where infrastructure is so damaged that either the building is unavailable or even getting to the building is dangerous. And then the board must make this vote, this finding, no later than every 45 days, which is an improvement over previous law, which required the vote to take place every 30 days, which is problematic when you don't meet that often. And then remote access may be limited to two-way telephonic service, so non-internet service if, for instance, Zoom is unavailable for technical problems during an emergency.
What if phones are down?
If the phones are completely down, then there is an argument that the general public access requirement where no internet or telephonic service is available at the location would apply. This is new, and SB 707 is a 22-page document when I printed it out for you, and I don't think that, it's a lot, and I don't think that the various provisions have been kind of weighed against each other by the Attorney General yet. So.
Contemplating the consequences of a Hayward-level earthquake that's been well documented by USGS to disrupt all manner of service, except satellites, which people don't have access to.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, in that situation, the board needs to do
We're gonna do what
business,
we have to
and
do.
We're gonna do what we have to
Right.
do and comply with the laws as best we
Forgiveness.
can. Yep.
Versus permission.
Yeah. So that's all I have on board member remote access, and then Lourdes is gonna talk about disability accommodation access.
One more question on, for the just cause provision, is there still a requirement to disclose persons present in the room? Just because I'm looking ahead and I see that as a requirement for the disability accommodation, but I didn't see it listed in the description for just.
Yeah, so at the end, I'm gonna go over the common requirements for all of these remote appearances, and that is one of them, so.
Okay, as the board may recall, last year, when Derek and I did this briefing, I had identified a case that, actually an Attorney General opinion that reversed the longstanding view that remote participation in public meetings by a member of a legislative body was not a reasonable accommodation because the physical presence of a board member was an essential function of being a board member. SB 707 recognized the Attorney General opinion that reversed that and has actually codified it now in the Brown Act. And so what the Brown Act says is that the Brown Act shall not be construed to prohibit a member of a legislative body with a disability from participating in any meeting of the legislative body by remote participation as a reasonable accommodation pursuant to any applicable law. It's a bit broad, but applicable law would mean generally state and federal disability laws, as the obligation to provide reasonable accommodation to an individual with a disability arises out of those laws. So it's FEHA and ADA. So a member participating in a meeting remotely as a reasonable accommodation shall do both of the following. One, they shall participate through both audio and visual technology, except that a member with a disability defined under Section 12102 of Title 42 of the U.S. Code may participate through audio only if a physical condition related to their disability results in a need to participate off camera. So let me break that down for you. Section 12102 is the federal disabilities law, so it's the Americans with Disability. And there is a slight distinction between federal law and state law in this regard, with respect to how disability is defined. Under federal law, a disability is defined as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activity of the individual, whereas under state law, disability is defined as a physical or mental impairment that limits. So there isn't a requirement that a physical or mental impairment substantially limit under state law, but there is under federal law. So reading all that together, for this provision, for a board member to be exempt from the requirement to participate both audio and visually, and participate only through audio, they must demonstrate a substantial limitation, that their impairment has a substantial limitation on one or more life activities, major life activities. Okay, so that's one the requirement that a board member participate through audio and visual. And the second requirement is that the member shall disclose at the meeting before any action is taken whether any other individual age 18 or older is present in the room at the remote location with the member, and the nature of the member's relationship with that individual. Okay. Remote, next slide, please. Thank you. Remote participation as a reasonable accommodation for a member's disability shall be treated as in-person attendance at the physical meeting location for all purposes, including a requirement that a quorum of the legislative body participate from any particular location. Are there any questions on this? Okay. And I'll turn it back over to Derek.
Okay. So to wrap up this part of the presentation, I just want to go over the common requirements for just cause, emergency circumstances, and disability remote access. The remote attendance must be noted in the meeting minutes, including the reason for the remote attendance. The board member must note the presence of any person 18 years or older in the room and the general nature of their relationship to the board member. The district must provide full public access via a remote app option. That means either a two-way audio-visual platform or a two-way telephonic service and live webcasting of the meeting. The board may take no action during disruption of the public remote service, and all votes must be via roll call. And then to wrap up this presentation, Lourdes is going to talk about other SB 707 changes related to the reporting of executive compensation. And then because the sunset provisions of the social media prohibitions have been removed, and because we get a lot of questions on social media use, Lourdes is just going to review the social media prohibitions. And that will conclude our presentation. So.
Okay, so SB 707 added an additional requirement on the legislative body's obligation to orally report a summary of a recommendation for a final action on salaries and fringe benefits paid to a local agency executive. So prior to 707, the requirement was to make that report as it pertains to, quote, local agency executives. When that law was enacted in 2017, we recommended that that term, local agency executive, be construed broadly. And we recommended that department heads and department directors and those in the SMT be included in that definition. 707 now actually codifies that a department head, that this requirement applies to department heads or other administrative officer of a local agency. So we've already been complying with this new requirement. We've already been doing what's now required under this new requirement. And the law has just caught up with what the district has been doing since 2017. Any questions on that? Okay, as Derek mentioned, the social media provisions of the Brown Act were set to expire on January 1st, 2026, and SB 707 removed that sunset clause. But no other substantive changes were made to the provisions regarding social media use by members of the legislative body. So just to do a quick recap, Risha, if we could go to the next slide. Let's go to the next slide. Basic rules. A general rule is that a majority of the members of the legislative body shall not, outside a meeting authorized under the Brown Act, use a series of communications of any kind, directly or through intermediaries, to discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item of business that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body. So that's a general rule. And the Brown Act was amended to expand on that general rule, to allow for the use of social media by members of a legislative body. And they did so by clarifying that the Brown Act does not prevent a member of a legislative body from engaging in separate conversations or communications on social media to answer questions, provide information to the public, or solicit information from the public with regards to a matter that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of that legislative body, provided that, next slide, please, a majority of the members do not use social media to discuss among themselves business of a specific nature that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body. And the Brown Act defines discuss among themselves as communications made, posted, or shared on social media between members, including comments or use of digital icons that express reactions to communications made by other members. Okay, so permissible use, you can answer questions, provide information to the public, or solicit information, provided that a majority of you do not discuss among yourselves comments, emojis, digital icons, business of a specific nature that is within the subject matter jurisdiction.
That topic.
So, and it's a little unclear, and this is where we get tripped up, because there is a third component to the social media use, and that is prohibited use, okay? A member shall not respond directly to any communication on social media regarding a matter within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body that is made, posted, or shared by any other member. So let me give you some examples. So here's one hypothetical I came up with. Board members may engage on social media to answer questions and provide information to the public. So let's say board member A, or let's say a member of the public posts a question on board member A's Facebook page asking, when is the next planning committee meeting? Okay, board member A, who is not on the planning committee, provides a date, but it's an incorrect date. Board member B, who is on the planning committee, starts to type a response to correct the date, but stops. Can board member B respond directly to board member A's post? Answer is no. Because of this prohibition that a member shall not respond directly to any communication on social media.
Does that include posting the link to the correct information
right.
without any other comment?
No response, no direct response. So what does a board member do? You see a mistake, what do? Call Risha. Exactly. Call Risha. There's incorrect information, and Risha can either tell board member A, this is incorrect information, you might want to change it, or Risha can respond directly to board member A.
So what's much more likely is that in those unfortunate moments when somebody refers me to a next door post that is about EBMUD in my ward, in my neighborhood and they're asking a specific, well, really what happens is that one of the people on Nextdoor says at Marguerite Young or at, and then they ask the question.
Yeah.
Or make a statement about right, and what I almost always do is just refer them, I respond to that member of the
Yes.
public and say, here's all the information about our budget and rates, customers, whatever the topic is, and I point them to, a thing on the website. Since Nextdoor is very localized, it would be very unlikely that anybody but maybe Andy would see if
Right.
Andy ever looked at Nextdoor, which, I try not to, but, he couldn't respond, he couldn't then add or whatever.
Right, I mean, if he's responding to you directly, he couldn't do that.
Right, but I'd be fine to do what I did.
Yes,
Right.
right, because you're responding to the member of the public and you're providing the member of the public information.
The other thing that seems to happen is that someone will post something about something going on at East Bay Mud. We'll all, when you press the like button, you can't see, unless you're friends with them, and even sometimes if you're not friends with them on Facebook, you can't see who else has liked something.
Right.
So is liking a post by the agency considered,
Engaging?
yeah.
Yes.
I hate
Discuss among yourselves means,
not another matter.
sorry.
Even if it's not even if it's not like, hey, our guys are out working every day, blah, 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 those posts. Yes.
So if it's not, so discussion among yourselves includes using digital icons that express reaction, so that does include like.
Yeah, but it's about something.
I get that point, that's the subject.
Yes,
It's
the subject
not
matter.
something that's in front of us, it's not something we're gonna
Yeah.
vote on, or maybe it's something we already voted on, so there's really no reason to complain about it.
Within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body. So it's, yeah, so you are precluded from discussing amongst yourselves business of a specific nature within the subject matter
Going to a
jurisdiction.
ballers game isn't.
So if you,
Going to a
so
ball
I
game
was not
is
allowed to
not-
like your post where you threw out the first pitch.
Right,
That's
That seems a
okay.
little bit.
that's okay,
That's okay,
even though it was East
Because
Bay
it-
Mud Day at the ballers.
right.
How is that not the same thing as
It's not
saying
the
you have
subject
the
matter.
agenda wrong?
Not the subject matter jurisdiction.
Right, ballers and throwing out the first pitch isn't necessarily subject matter.
But if
mean,
I
we can make
liked
that.
Jim's comment or said, no, Jim, the wastewater treatment plant is the other direction.
So here's an
Then that
example.
would be in the subject matter jurisdiction because we're talking about.
Because you corrected the
Or-
recycled water.
mistake.
Or you say, great job, Marguerite, it's East Bay Mud Day at the Ballers game. Marguerite throws out the first pitch. Director Odie likes it and then comments, oh, and our data, let's just say, our data shows increased consumption during the Ballers game, during the televising of the Ballers game, increased water consumption. I encourage you to participate. You didn't post the baller, right? The baller post wasn't posted by you, but mentioned you. And then, but Director Odie commented on the baller post. If you were to respond directly to Director Odie's comment, that could be problematic.
Oh, so wait, there can be separate comments by board members that are from a East Bay Mud post, as long as.
Not
they're
an East Bay Mud
wasn't
post,
East
if
Bay
it's a
Mud
baller
post,
post
you're
about
saying.
East Bay
Okay.
Mud Day at the baller game.
It just seems,
So I would say the law is unclear. I mean, I
I
think there's
think
an
you're right.
argument. There is an argument that because the Brown Act defines specific prohibited conduct, you may not react to each other's post, that, reacting to a third-party post is not prohibited. That being said, there's also an argument that if 5 of you or 4 of you like a third-party post, you're all kind of providing, well, I saw Director Odie's, he liked that, I like it too, and then I saw that President Young liked it, so I like it too, and so suddenly 4 of you have kind of engaged collectively on a matter within the subject matter jurisdiction, and that's why we always advise, is it clear, black and white law? No, but we always advise, we caution against liking third-party posts.
It's strange in that the limited permissible use really seems to operate as helpful guidance, but the general rule still applies. And the prohibited use is uniquely new. And that is, it really is quite new because it seems to be the first time that Brown Act is prohibiting interaction that only requires, one or two board members as opposed to a quorum.
Yeah, within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative
Well,
body.
and it may be
But-
posted or shared by any other member.
Correct.
But yeah, it's narrow because it has to be a direct response to that other member's
Post or
post.
reaction by another board member.
Well, the social media has been around in one form or another for 20 years, and the legislature finally, felt confident enough in the architecture of social media to describe it in code. I still find that there's an ambiguity about what tagging is, despite the legislature's ability to kind of seize on comments and posts and emojis, those features are in here, but I still don't know what a tag is or means. Right, yeah.
Joe?
Last time we talked about this, I think we were told that it's okay to share an East Bay Mud post on your own as long as you don't respond there. So we can each do that
You
as
can
long
provide
as we
information.
don't,
Respond to each other.
yeah, okay.
So it's
Just
really
making
about,
sure.
more about responding, doing, acting as if we know or would see or have any opinion about.
I guess I had another hypothetical. So say, for instance, somebody posted, open the lakes, right?
Open the,
Open the lakes, let our boats on. And like 4 or 5 of us decided to, share that or like that. I can see, because that's something maybe we have yet to take an action on.
Right.
But once we do take an action and the district posts something that says, these are the rules regarding the opening of the lakes, I don't know why we can't like that, because that's a district policy that the board has already adopted. So
We
does that,
can like that, we just can't comment about,
can we
can't
can we all
say-
like it? Can we all share it?
So again, it's
I mean,
not.
to me, it's like a
it's not
public
specific.
relations thing that maybe, the district posts something and the 7 of us can get it out to more people than the district.
And
But it
again,
seems to me
going-
we're not allowed to share
yeah,
that.
going back to the general rule, are you congregating? Are you expressing information and congregating outside of a regularly noticed meeting? So are you expressing something, are you even with emoticons and comments, are you discussing, among the majority of you, even something that you've already taken action on and passed? And I think that is, if you go back to the general rule that you cannot congregate unless, it's pursuant to the Brown Act and it's specially noticed, that might be a guidepost to guide you in terms of, whether that's something that's permissible or not. Given those general principles, I would say no.
Because it's
Because it's a congregation, you're communicating with each other, a majority of you are communicating with each other in an unnoticed meeting.
It sounds like it falls specifically within the definition of discuss among themselves, which
Right.
could be permissible among 2 or 3, but it's risky.
And I think
Again, that's about the-
Director Odie said there is no discussion in his example because the board has already met
Right.
and acted and passed.
Right, but
He's
by
just- they're just
expressing,
putting out the information.
And the Brown Act primarily is it's about action that has yet to be
Yeah,
taken.
that's what confuses me.
Yes, although. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
it's
and-
just
and-
absurd that we
if
can't
I may
share.
correct my comment, discuss amongst themselves is specifically for reactions to communications made by other members. So that, the general rule may still apply, but that definition only applies to other members.
We do see some statutes under the Political Reform Act and similar statutes about items that are under consideration by the board, et cetera. The term within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body is a much broader term. And it means, in theory, if you can vote on it, if you can take action on it because it's something within your authority to do so, whether you ever will or ever have, that doesn't matter. If it's within your subject matter jurisdiction, it falls within the prohibition.
So we can't like or dislike an action we already took.
That's That is correct. Because it is within your subject matter jurisdiction and no action is forever.
But four of us could share it on our own individual platforms.
Correct.
Well, or as
That would be
I
providing
did,
information.
as I will disclose, I made a post at the end of the year about the, I don't even remember what the initial thing was, but saying,
like it,
right, I don't remember
I
it,
didn't
so.
see it.
About being proud to be associated with an agency that, you know, X, Y,
I
Z.
saw
and I don't-
that. I
You
saw
saw
it, but I didn't comment.
He didn't like it.
Right, on my own personal page, and I don't know, I got some likes, I don't think any of you guys liked it, but that's okay, right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
You're providing.
it's just, it's what the next person does that's the problem.
Right.
And maybe just for clarity, just because I get asked from time to time. So if the district posts something that's, has a crew out working on the streets and said, East Bay Mud workers hard at work, can all the board members like East Bay Mud's post?
No.
Just saying East Bay Mud workers hard at work.
That's just not,
So, but
that
let me
seems
ask you a
absurd.
question.
But
But we
does.
just share it on our own.
Where
That
we
is a
would
gray
advise
area.
caution.
But suppose
that
we did
providing-
that and we are now in violation. What's gonna happen?
Can they
Well,
undo the
nothing's gonna
repair?
happen unless somebody
Somebody's
makes a
gonna have
complaint.
problems with the fact that we liked.
I mean,
All of us
technically, you could
liked
be
our
found to have
employees.
violated the Brown Act and all of the attendant remedies.
Yeah, but who's going,
And
but
what happens? That's what, I mean, that was a
no
serious.
You have to
media.
undo
I didn't write the
undo the
law.
repairs.
Well, I mean,
I
there,
didn't write
What
the
would
law,
happen?
I'm just
Yeah,
explaining to you what the law says.
there are some very serious, cases out there, like, the court ordering, that Alameda County's appointment of a vacancy to the Board of Supervisors was a Brown Act violation, so it can get quite serious. But, I think General Manager Chan's example seems to fall under the limited permissible use of providing information to the public. Just plain information, very, very vanilla, East Bay Mud employees hard at work.
And
that's
whether
the
we
district's
would or
post.
will ever consider anything related to crews in the street is, right.
You just have to go undo the fix. The
I'm
fix
gonna
was
go
illegal,
unlike
because we
everything.
commented about it. It's absurd sometimes. The legislator is 20 years behind the times, in my opinion.
So that's all we have for you this morning.
Okay.
If there are any other questions, we're happy to answer them.
We will post them.
We'll post our critique.
No, seriously, thank you for the presentation on what is a serious topic.
It is. It's just.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Okay,
your
thank you very much.
Oh, yeah,
Next.
right, we're in the middle of a closed session meeting. We're now, continue the closed session meeting, in, conference room 8 to discuss agenda items 1A through D, and ideally, we'll be back here in an hour at 1:15. We'll see. Okay, welcome to the Tuesday, January 13th, 2026 regular business meeting of the East Bay Mud Board of Directors. Madam Secretary, could you please call the roll?
Director Chan,
Here.
Director Gomez,
Here.
Director Katz,
Here.
Director Lewis,
Here.
Director Odie,
Present.
Director Smith,
Present.
President Young.
I'm here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we are now into our annual election of board officers for 2026, beginning with the election of the board president. The floor is now open for nominations for president of the board, and in keeping with our historical pattern, I would like to nominate, or tradition, I guess, nominate Luz Gomez for president of the board.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, all those in favor of Director Gomez becoming president of the Board of East Bay Mud, please signify by,
One,
oh,
did she accept her nomination?
that we want.
oh, does she have to accept it? Okay, do you want to accept the nomination?
I accept the nomination.
Thank you, Director Gomez.
So if there are no other nominations, then we'll close. We vote to.
Oh, we have to
close
vote
the
to close,
nominations.
okay, so let's vote to close nominations.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have a motion? I need a motion and a second, I guess, for that.
Second.
Moved by Director Lewis, seconded by Director Katz. All right, now,
All those in favor?
although, oh, sorry. God, I'm blowing my last official duties as president here. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, now, back to the motion to elect Director Gomez president of the board. I need I guess, a motion and a second.
No,
We do?
yeah, we
No,
did that. part.
no, we did,
You nominated?
we
and then you're going
nominated,
to
but we
elect.
didn't make the motion to approve.
Move to elect
There you go.
Luis Gomez as board president for 2026.
Director Katz, seconded by Director Lewis. Okay, now, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Here you go.
Thank you very much for placing this trust in me. Much appreciated. I hope I don't disappoint.
We're right here.
Right here. Thank you very much. So with that, the next item on the agenda would be to open the floor for nominations for vice president of the board for 2026. Director Odie.
I'd like to nominate Director Lewis as vice president.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Do you accept a nomination, Director Lewis?
I do.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I would like to abstain.
Any abstentions? One abstention. Any opposed? Okay, so now we would like to make an official motion to elect director.
I think we need
Or
to
to
close
them.
nominations.
Or
We have to
maybe
close.
if someone has another one.
Oh, yeah, do we have any other nominations? So if no more than one are nominated, each nomination must be put to a vote. So now we do need to do a vote by the board for vice president.
To
We have to
elect.
close nominations first.
Motions. Okay, so we close the nomination.
Okay. Do we have a motion to close the
I'll move
nomination?
that we close nominations.
Yeah, I second.
All in favor? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay. So now.
Now we vote to
do need
nominate.
vote to nominate.
To elect.
To elect. We need a motion to elect Vice President Lewis.
So moved.
Okay, and we need a second?
Second.
Moved by Director Smith, seconded by Director Odie. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. So with that, we have a president and a vice president. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. So now I would like to announce to my fellow board members that we all received a form in front of us that we need to review and provide your preferences for to the district secretary by this Friday, please. The proposed assignments will be discussed and considered at the January 27th regular meeting. And the representative for the Aqua Joint Powers Insurance Authority will be appointed by resolution at the January 27th regular meeting. Are there any questions or comments on this item? Okay, thank you. So now we would like to make any announcements from closed session, and there are no announcements required from closed session. And we move on to public comment. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone for public comment for any items on the online?
We have no public comment?
Do we have anybody in the audience?
No.
Okay, so we will now move on to committee reports. And the minutes of the December 9 Planning Committee meeting and Special Finance Committee meeting are provided in our agenda materials. And we will now receive a brief update from this morning's Planning Committee and Ledge and Human Resources Committees. So first, Director Lewis, if you could give us your Planning Committee update, please.
Good afternoon. The Planning Committee met today for its first meeting of the year. All members of the committee were present, which included Directors Chan, Gomez, and myself. We received and accepted a report on the Central Contra Costa Sanitary District and Dublin San Ramon Service District, East Bay Mud Municipal Utility District Recycled Water Authority Wastewater Diversion Program. The report talked about, projections, needs in the future, and gave us kind of an update on what to look for.
Thank you very much, Director Lewis. I will give a brief update on, a brief report on this morning's Ledge HR Committee. We met and received an update on the administrative code for the district, something that we've been looking forward to having, where all of our codes will be in one location, easy to find, and improves transparency, and an update on the internal and external recruitments. And those updates went really well as well. So thank you to staff for providing all of those reports. And with that, we will move on to considering our consent calendar items 1 through 9. So are there any comments from the public for consent items 1 through 9?
No public comment?
And President Gomez, I'd like to pull item number 1.
You would? Okay,
Yes.
so we will pull item number 1. So,
I'd like to pull item number 3.
and item number 3. Okay. So with
I'll
that,
move to accept items 2 and then 4 through, is it 9?
9. Okay, we have a motion to accept item 2 and 4 through 9. Do we have a second?
Sure.
Okay, we have a second, moved by Director Young, seconded by Director Odie. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So for item number 2,
Or number 1.
sorry, number 1.
Risha, would you like to?
Yes. Director Chan submitted questions regarding the East Bay Mud Captive Insurance Company on December 8th and asked that they be filed to be inserted into the board meeting notes. And that information was not included in the board meeting notes, and so we would like to correct the minutes to file the questions as a part of item 2, items filed with the board. And that's what we'll add to the minutes and for the board's consideration.
Okay. So do we need to do a separate motion?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to, yes.
Okay, so,
I had a comment.
oh yeah, comment?
I just want to note, if you read the minutes, I was away from the dais a long time during that meeting, and our company was merged with another company, and it was our first month-end close, so I want to apologize to my colleagues and members of staff for the long absence at that meeting.
Thank you, Director Odie. So I need a motion to approve consent item 1.
I'll move that we adopt item 1.
Second? Oh, I can second, right?
Do we just adopt, or is it a motion to amend the minutes, or
Well, accept
To,
the change.
to approve the minutes with the amendment.
amendment? Okay. Second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes with the amendment. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Thank you, Risha.
You're welcome.
So now we move on to discuss item number 3.
Right. I actually had a couple of simple questions about this. I know that there are going to be, that this money is allocated for San Ramon for a couple of, for hydrants in my district. Is that correct? 7? District number 7? Ward number 7?
This is for hydrants throughout the district.
Okay, but I was just kind of curious about where in my ward some of these hydrants might go. And so, and I understand one of them might be on Crow Canyon Boulevard, is that correct?
I don't know any specific locations for the hydrants because these hydrants get replaced as part of our routine maintenance or our pipeline replacement work
Well, can
So
you
it's-
just let me know?
I can find out if there's any specific hydrants in your ward that we know that we're going to replace.
Okay, yeah. That's all. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from directors on item number 3? Okay. If
Oh,
not-
shoot, I hate it when I do. Sorry, I'm sorry. I was just trying to pull up the agenda online.
All right, so
it
with
opens.
that, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, a second.
Second.
Moved. And second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay, item carries. Very good, so we've moved through our consent calendar, and now we're going to,
Do our legislative updates. And we have Kathy Biatelli here, our Manager of Legislative Affairs, to kick this off.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay. Well, good afternoon, Board, and congratulations, President Gomez and Vice President Lewis. I look forward to working with you this year. We are here today because we're presenting the federal priorities for 2026. That is in your board packet. It's our board report to you, and it's for your consideration and approval today. They represent important focus areas for us. They guide our work on behalf of the district, and it's based on our best assessment at this moment of what is likely to come before Congress this year. Before we get into those, though, every year we invite our lobbyist in DC, Eric Saperstein, who has been with us for over 3 decades. And he is going to provide kind of an overview of what has happened this last year in Congress, how that informs these priorities going forward, and give you kind of a political outlook, which will set the context, and then I'll come back and present them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric and let him proceed for a few minutes here, and then I'll come back up.
Eric, can you give me one moment? I have a hand.
All the
for
time you want.
Eric, oh, thank you. I have a hand for public comment. I just want to see what item. Francis, you should be able to mute your mic. Is this on an agenda or non-agenda item, or is this on the legislative update?
This is on the non-agenda item. I didn't see general public comment being called for, and I wanted to make a comment.
We did call for public comment at the beginning of the meeting. Pleasure of the president.
Okay, I apologize. I can bow out then, but I did want to call attention to something, 100-year anniversary for Pete's Hardware in Castro Valley is tomorrow, and it's for the district. It's its only customer that has been with it for 100 years. And I was hoping to see on today's agenda that the district was going to commemorate or in some way acknowledge Pete's Hardware. And that's all I had. Thank you.
thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Duly noted. Would you like to add to that? public
I can comment. I would like to ask staff for clarification because I haven't seen us do something like this. Given Pete's Hardware is a cornerstone institution in Castro Valley, I definitely don't agree. I mean, yeah, I don't disagree with some sort of acknowledgement if it is appropriate.
Yeah, it's certainly not something we've done in the past where we recognize a particular customer, but if the board would like us to send them some sort of note of appreciation, we can certainly do that.
What have we done? Tell me what have we done in the past about things like this? Anything?
Again, I'm not aware of us recognizing a particular customer, but I'd have to look into this more detail, but.
Okay, well, of course, I'm worried about setting precedent. If we do it for this business, are we going to have to do it for all the businesses in the ward? But I will be happy to be there tomorrow to congratulate the owner of the business. But I do think maybe it's unwise to start a precedent here.
Thank you.
That's your mic.
What? That's your mic.
That's your mic, because I can't
Okay.
hear Louis.
Thank you for Thank you for that public comment. Now let's move on with our presentation. Thank you for your patience, Eric.
Oh, my pleasure. First of all, let me echo Kathy's congratulations to both you and Director Lewis, now Vice President Lewis. So as I do, I come up here every year, give you an overview and everything else. I thought about telling you that nothing going on in Washington, and that's my presentation. In all seriousness.
You're not going to talk about international law?
Yeah, exactly. It is good to be here again with you. We do this every year. It's an opportunity for us to provide you with a flavor of what's going on in Washington, excuse me, and what informs us, as Kathy referenced, for the federal priorities going forward in this year. One thing about the federal priorities, they are aligned with the priorities of last year. Why? Because we are in the second and final session of this Congress. So in many instances, a number of the issues that we've been pursuing over the past year are alive at the federal level because unlike the state level, bills stay alive for 2 years. So with that, and then in the interest of time, okay, it's working. Let me just quickly tell you who we are. For some of you, you may not know me. Our firm is a firm that is dedicated to providing federal advocacy for water sector interests, public water sector interests. We've dedicated our resources and efforts to that end, and we are grateful for the opportunity to have worked with the district over all these many decades. Our successes have been many, working with you and working with the congressional delegation, dating back to the Freeport project and being designed, permanent, and operating now. And then, of course, over the years, the district has been in Washington pursuing federal assistance for water recycling when it wasn't a common word to be bandied about in the halls of Congress. And you have the Durwood project out there. You have another project underway with the Corps of Engineers. And I would just note, all these efforts that we conduct are based on our commitment to public agency work. So that's who our firm is. And I just want to give you that quick overview of who we are. Turning attention now to the agenda, you'll see it up there. These are the issues I want to go forward on. First and foremost, the congressional delegation. It goes without saying that our delegation continues to advance the district's priorities: safe, reliable, affordable water supply, improved water quality, protection of fisheries and natural resources across the board. One thing I would say is that our delegation in the House is well-positioned to advocate and articulate the interests that you're concerned about. John Garamendi, he sits as the senior member of the delegation today. Excuse me. He is on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Why is that important? Because that's the committee with jurisdiction over the Clean Water Act, water quality issues, and the Water Resources Development Act. This is the law that funds or authorizes, water projects like your water recycling program that is now in the works. He also sits on Armed Services. That really doesn't impact the district, obviously, but he plays a senior role there too. Let me jump down to Mark Desaulnier for a second. He sits also on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Same commitment to water quality, water infrastructure, the State Revolving Loan Fund program for wastewater needs. And he also sits on the Health, Education, and Workforce Committee. And I mention that because it's important, because he is committed, the congressman, to advancing workforce enhancements so that clean energy jobs, I know it's not fashionable right now in Washington, but he is committed to providing the ability for clean energy jobs into the future, workforce opportunities for the next generation of the water sector. So he plays an important role in that committee also. Go to Latifah Simon, the newest member of our congressional delegation, sits on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Why is that important? Because in that role, the Congresswoman plays an oversight on what the administration is doing on the federal bureaucracy, reorganizing, RIFs, reductions in force, management of programs. And so Congresswoman Simon sits in judgment on what's going on in Washington from a programmatic basis at the executive branch, among other things. And then she's also on the Small Business Committee, talking about Pete's Hardware. She plays a role on that too. I would say, I skipped over Eric Swalwell. We all know he's running for governor, right? So you're going to have a new member of the delegation. And who that is, we have no idea, right? But we do know one thing for certain. That certainty is that between, I think it's February 6th or thereabouts and March 9th, folks that are interested in running for that seat must inform the county of that decision. So at least by March 9th, you'll know who could possibly be your next member of the congressional delegation going forward. So the second thing I want to point out is the Senate delegation. So obviously Senator Padilla, Senator Schiff sit on the Senate side. Both these members sit on key committees of interest also to the district. I would say that for Senator Padilla, as the senior senator from the state, he sits on the Budget Committee with jurisdiction over all things, obviously, setting the, shall we call it, the top line numbers for the appropriations committees to spend year in and year out. He also plays an important role because of reconciliation. We'll get into that in a few minutes. That's the bill, that's the law, the process that gave us the one big, beautiful bill that is right now being implemented. He sits on Environment and Public Works with jurisdiction, unlike the House, jurisdiction on a number of bills, a number of laws, excuse me, one being the state revolving loan fund program for both clean water and drinking water, the Endangered Species Act, Water Resources Development, and toxic substances, chemicals like PFAS. And we'll get into that in a minute too. So he has a broad swath, if you will, of responsibilities from an authorizer standpoint on the Environment and Public Works Committee. Notable, he's on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. An important point here is that that committee has jurisdiction over Western water policy. And the senator today has instructed his staff to work with Representative David Valdeo from Northern California, a Republican in the House, to find out if there's a way to get a Western water bill developed to renew the water infrastructure for the WIN Act, the Water Infrastructure Improvements for the Nation Act, which has expired, to see if they can put something together that could be taken up by the Congress in this year before Congress recesses for the year in the midterm elections. So he's going to play a role on what the future might be for California water in legislation on the energy and natural resources with his other colleagues. And not to minimize Senator Schiff, he sits on the Environment and Public Works Committee in that role and it's unusual, we have two members on the committee. That is highly unusual from California. So we have, call it, two votes on policy issues when they come up to the Environment and Public Works Committee decision-making process. And the senator sits as the ranking member of the subcommittee on that committee with jurisdiction over clean water issues, fisheries, and what have you. And he also sits as a member of the committee with jurisdiction over natural resource issues in the committee. So he's going to play an important role. And then, as you can see, he sits on the Agriculture Committee, the Judiciary Committee, along with Senator Padilla, and Small Business. So you're well represented in Congress on the committees of jurisdiction. I would also note we have another member who works really hard for issues that we really care about, and that's Representative Jared Huffman from the Marin region and further up, based on the redistricting under Prop 50. He'll go way up north, even more so. But he is the senior member on that committee on natural resources for the Democrats, which has jurisdiction over Western water policy issues, natural resources, fisheries, any and everything you can think of with regard to addressing safe, reliable, affordable water supplies while balancing the needs of our natural resources. And he works very closely with our delegation, so we have somebody that they can work with on that committee also. And then I would just close in general between the House and the Senate. While we don't have anybody on the Appropriations Committee, the fact that our delegation is well regarded and respected by their colleagues translates into funding assistance that you have received in the congressionally directed spending process, otherwise known as earmarks, over the past several years. So, well, like I said, we don't have somebody on the committee on appropriations in the House and Senate. We have the support of the members of the Committee on Appropriations. So, moving ahead, let's go to 25. I would tell you that the past year has been nothing short of a Category 5 hurricane. It has just been a whirlwind, or maybe it's a swirling vortex. The change has slammed every element and corner of federal policy making, as you've seen in the news and everything else. I would say, though, that because of that, the closely divided Congress, and the fact that we have a political environment that we've never been in before, what we have seen and what sort of captures how Washington works right now is executive orders, okay? The president has issued many executive orders. Now, I don't know what he's done today, but as of putting this presentation together, he had issued 217 executive orders in his first 10 months in office. By comparison, presidents before him issued maybe 30, 34. So you can see the power of the executive pen in Washington is pushing and breaking all the norms. That's how he's doing it, okay? I would say for us, the key EOs have been outside of sort of enforcement of housing or any kind of social policy issues. For us, the real issue has been water. And he issued an EO literally within days of taking office, which was called Emergency Measures to Provide Water Resources in California and Improve Disaster Response in Certain Areas. This was the executive order that resulted in the release of lots of water up in Northern California, and it went into farmland, not to Southern California, but that's how he is doing things and how the federal agencies are doing things, by the power of the pen and executive order. What does that mean? It means that the rules and the rule book in general don't necessarily govern decision-making at this point. It's going to be whatever the executive order says, the agencies will follow it. So I think from a perspective of 25, it really was driven by executive orders. I would also say in 2025, the key issues really, aside from executive orders, reconciliation and reorganization.
Is it working?
Reconciliation, reorganization, and reductions in force or layoffs. The reconciliation process was the one big beautiful bill. That is the bill that allowed Congress to move legislation affecting every corner of the economic platform of the federal government through the House, Senate, to the president's desk on a majority vote, avoiding a filibuster. Bottom line is, you've seen the one big beautiful bill put some dollars in defense, put some dollars in other agencies that normally might not have gotten as big a dollar value. And so essentially, reordered, reshuffled the deck, if you will, of cards on how things are getting done in Washington. Reorganization, the government at the federal level has implemented a number of policies. One was the DOGE process, which got rid of a number of federal agency workers through voluntary separation and early retirement. And again, reductions in force, the administration tried to basically lay off a number of people that did not take advantage of the process of early retirements, and that was effectively forestalled by the federal courts. And so 2025 was basically reductions in the general federal workforce, but not as significant, but not as severe as we would have thought, because the federal courts pushed back and forced the administration not to lay off as many people as they were trying to. And then finally, the federal budget and the continuing resolution. The federal budget, we went into a shutdown for a record 45 days. They came back, passed a continuing resolution that extended the federal government to January 30th of this month. Good news is that as of the end of this week, we are hopeful that EPA and the Department of the Interior and the U.S. Corps of Engineers, among other agencies, will have their final budget in place and will be on sort of a glide path for the next several months till September 30th, when the budget year comes to a close. And we start the funding games again, and I'll talk to you about it in a second, for FY27. So what is the outlook for 2026? Couple of thoughts here. Top line, reconciliation in the 27 budget. Reconciliation, what I call 2.0. Folks were uncertain whether this was going to happen or not this coming year because, they're pretty tired in Congress of doing these sort of major bills very quickly without a lot of sort of debate, and that's what reconciliation is. You get it done really quickly without a lot of debate. As of yesterday, the House Republican Study Conference, which is sort of a think tank, if you will, for the Republican Party in the House, issued a game plan, their sort of wish list for Reconciliation 2.0. Why that is important is that they want to cut more federal spending. Their desire is $1.6 trillion in additional spending cuts across the domestic side of the budget, further reducing the size and scope of the federal government workforce, among other things, and of course, increasing the commitment to the defense budget. We'll see what happens. It is an election year, and bottom line, I will tell you is that I don't think there's a uniform agreement right now in the House or the Senate to do another big reconciliation bill. But for us, we'll just wait and see, and we'll be monitoring that. The 27 budget, not a big secret there. It's going to go to the Congress on or around the first or second week of February, unless there's a further delay. President gives his State of the Union on February 24th, which is why we think the budget will probably go up around the middle of February, second week at the latest. It'll have, no surprise, continued efforts to eliminate federal programs, reduce federal budgets. For us particularly, we'll see, I think, the administration reducing, if not eliminating, trying to reduce or eliminate the state revolving loan fund, for example, under the rubric, if you will, of federal cooperativeness. And that is just a euphemism for let's shift the cost of financing these programs onto the local sector of the state government. So will that get purchase or traction in Congress? Probably not in an election year, and probably won't even have an answer until the lame duck session. And that's really because of the numbers that are in Congress with majority rule in the House and in the Senate. There just isn't a working majority right now to get it done before the elections. And then, of course, we've got a couple of must-do bills that are going to be taken up over the next couple of months. Reauthorization of the Water Infrastructure Improvements for the Nation Act, I mentioned that early. When Water Resources Development Act, which is done every 2 years, and that is underway right now by both the House and Senate committees. Among other things that are going to sort of be top-line issues for the committees in the House and Senate is forever chemicals, PFAS, and the liability that is out there to public agencies because of the EPA's designation of PFAS as a, quote, hazardous substance under CERCLA, which is also known as Superfund, the nation's hazardous waste site cleanup law. Our guess is that there is, we'll call it better than a 50% chance that Congress will attempt to give public agencies in the water sector liability protections from being subject to third-party litigation for cleanup of PFAS sites, simply because you, in carrying out your public health services, sort of figuratively touched PFAS, and therefore you are part of the cleanup problem. So we're hopeful because we've, including Senator Padilla and Senator Schiff recently at a hearing, expressed deep concern on the potential liability for the public sector because of the designation of hazardous substance for PFAS and the way the Superfund liability laws work. Low-income household water assistance program. This is something that Senator Padilla has been championing for several years now. He has not given up on it. There is going to be a state revolving loan fund and Safe Drinking Water Acts reauthorization effort that's underway in both the House and the Senate committees. Those bills could become vehicles for the senator to attach something like an assistance program. So we're optimistic that there may be some action on that front. And then permitting reforms, let me just say generally, There is a bipartisan interest in trying to figure out how to modernize the permitting process. But that bipartisan process of trying to figure something out tends to fall apart when we get to the specifics. Right now, both the House and Senate are trying to deal with permit reforms to expedite project approvals, but do it in a way that is protective of the environment and protects the interests of citizens. We'll see what happens there. So what are the East Bay MUD policy priorities going forward? As I said earlier, they are in alignment with the district's mission, obviously, but they're also consistent with where Congress is today on what they want to do with respect to clean water, drinking water, natural resources policies. So the first thing is water supply reliability and natural resource protection. And Kathy's going to go over all these things in greater detail, but essentially it's all about defending and protecting East Bay MUD's water supply priorities, interests, and ensuring that the ratepayers have a sustainable, reliable, and safe water supply. Water quality, essentially we want to make certain that water quality and pollution prevention programs keep their teeth, allow for improvements, protect the resources, and work to ensure that the district's interests are communicated effectively through both our own efforts and the national trade associations like National Association of Clean Water Agency, the American Water Works Associations, any alphabet groups that are out there that deal with water policy. And then federal funding assistance. One thing that you can bank on in a city that is very hard to say things with certainty right now is there will be continuing funding of congressionally directed project spending, so that we believe that the district's funding needs can be advanced through either programmatic or congressionally directed funding in the coming year, depending on what the needs are. But the Congress is not walking away from its prerogative to define what is and is not going to be spent on programs as well as projects throughout the federal system, and specifically at EPA. So my closing thoughts, and this is where it sort of gets a little fun. There's a slim House and Senate majority, and it will complicate passage of legislation without bipartisan buy-in. But these folks are all up for re-election in the House, and we have a number of senators up for re-election. And so they have to prove that they're doing something. And so there is an opportunity for something to be done, whatever that something is, whether it's clean water, it's Western water policy, what have you. The opportunities are there, and they probably will get something done. However, the progress will be incremental, and I don't see it finally coming to a conclusion until there's a lame duck. Be some things that might get done so they can point to it, but the big issues like Western water policy issues and things like that will be carried on into a lame duck. And why is that the issue? As of today in the House, Speaker Johnson has the overwhelming majority of one vote. It's very hard to get things done in the House of Representatives when you don't have a working majority. And oh, by the way, there's a fellow by the name of Tom Massey from Kentucky. And I think on a good day, he has contempt for the Speaker. So, I mean, effectively, the Speaker doesn't have a working majority. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the next several months as the budget rolls out, as other things happen, how the Speaker gets things done. And my biggest fear, just sort of thinking out loud, is the Speaker might just say, okay, we went home because of the Epstein files, now we don't have a working majority. Everybody go home, and it'll be a very short session until the elections. Probably not going to happen, but that's a possibility. I would also say in the midterm elections, I call it dynamics or dysfunction. You have Prop 50 that has reset the table in California. You'll probably have about, 3, maybe 5 new Democratic members in the House in the California delegation. But also what's important is at the national level. You have, I've lost count of the number of states. I think there's like 12 states that are going through redistricting right now. Florida just called a special session to redistrict. Bottom line is this. You pick up 5 seats in California for the Democrats, you pick up 5 seats in Texas for the Republicans. Florida, you pick up 3 to 4 seats. North Carolina, for the Republicans, North Carolina, maybe 2. But then factor in Virginia, they're looking at picking up 4 Democratic seats if they can pull it off in the next couple of weeks, a month's time. Pick up New York, another 1 or 2 seats. Maryland is so upset that the governor and the speaker of the state senate are proceeding with trying to figure out how to redistrict the one remaining Republican out of business. So my point in saying those numbers is not to confuse you, but to say at the end of the day, it's a wash. If anybody thinks that redistricting is going to end up with this landslide for the Republicans, as I think the president was hoping for when they started this off with Texas, it's not that easy. The numbers aren't shaking out the way they thought. Maybe it's 2 votes in favor of the Republicans, or maybe it's 3. But the point is, there's going to be a lot of change going on, and we just don't know who's going to be in control of the House of Representatives. However, significant member retirements. As of this morning, we picked up another member from Florida, a Republican, who's quitting. We are now up to 47 members of Congress who are quitting Congress, either outright or running for another office. And so, you know, you've got a lot of seats that are going to be vacant, and we're looking right now at 10% of the House of Representatives changing personalities as opposed to votes. So we'll see what happens there. And then as far as policy priorities go, I just want to restate again that the 26 priorities are in alignment with what your priorities are with respect to the overall picture of protecting natural resources and safe and reliable water supplies. And then I'll close by just saying that we have incredibly strong support and respect within the delegation, both your delegation and throughout the California Congressional Delegation. We go in and we talk to them about the issues of concern that you have and your priorities. So with that, I will conclude, and I'm happy to answer any questions if time permits, or Kathy.
Eric, so does anybody have any questions? Yeah, Director Chen?
Hey, good evening, afternoon, Eric. I hope you had a pleasant trip here. I am interested in what you were saying about water rights and East Bay Mud water rights. Do you foresee the Trump administration trying to interfere somehow with our water rights, and can they, given state law?
No, I don't see that, and I don't think that, I think if you're referring to sort of what he's trying to do with the Central Valley Project and what have you, it's not that easy because it's sort of like whack-a-mole. You do one thing, and then something else pops up, and there's another piece of litigation. I think the only certainty I would say to you is that the Colorado River is your friend, because that's going to really capture a lot of attention and focus. So I think, yes, we are aware and we are watching for any adverse impacts from changes to the operation of the Central Valley Project. But I think the real issue is to keep in mind that you do have members in the form of Senator Padilla, Representative Huffman, and your congressional delegation that are going to support protection of your water rights.
Thank you, very reassuring.
Any other thoughts or questions from? So with that, thank you so much for your presentation, and we will welcome Kathy
Thank you very
for her
much.
presentation. Thank you for being here.
Actually, Eric, I was just going to say, I mean, we could ask you a question, but your crystal ball is as murky as everybody else's. So.
It's actually cracked at the moment.
We're cracked.
This would have been a tectonic shift. So thank you, Eric. I really want to emphasize what he's saying and what is being pointed out here. The federal situation is very uncertain. And there's so many variables, and we are experiencing these tectonic shifts in norms and democratic institutions and things that are happening at the moment, that any of that could have influence on Congress. So we do our best job to sort of predict what we think are going to be the priorities. And so as he had pointed out, we are keeping the 3 priorities that we had from last year because we are in the second session of the 119th Congress. So those were water supply reliability and natural resource protection, water quality, and then federal funding assistance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through each one, and explain how they have evolved this year based on what we had in the report last year. So if you wish to follow along, I am in your board report, and I'm starting on page 3 of that report with water supply reliability and natural resource protection. So as Eric has pointed out, the administration, the Trump administration and Congress are going to continue to focus on Western water issues. And that includes California. There is going to be a focus on the Colorado River because that compact is expiring and they are negotiating that right now. But there is a focus because of the president's promise through his executive order, which was 14181 that Eric mentioned, which really directed the federal agencies to take all available measures to maximize water deliveries from the Central Valley Project. And prior to the release of that executive order, the president had also put out a memo talking about putting people over fish. So to make good on that promise, the Bureau of Reclamation recently signed and released something called a record of decision, and that was done just last month, on a new long-term operation plan for the Central Valley Project. The record of decision essentially supersedes what was the last update to the long-term operation plan, which was approved and last December under the Biden administration, in 2024, under the Biden administration. And that plan, essentially, it's a coordinated framework that both the state and federal agencies use to balance the water supplies between farms, cities, and the environmental needs, particularly in protecting federally listed salmon species and delta smelt. So under the new record of decision, which is essentially just the public document, the Central Valley Project may now increase their annual water deliveries between 130,000 and 180,000 acre feet, depending on hydrologic conditions. And that is up significantly from what it was. It also makes other changes to water management actions, and it removes references that were in the previous record of decision to early export reductions that were proposed for the Central Valley Project to be in support of the Healthy Rivers and Landscapes program, which is a program we support. So the feds are participants in that as well. But those references, those concepts that were in the previous record of decision are no longer there. Reclamation is claiming that they made these updates to the record of decision, and they're within the range of values that was evaluated previously under the previously adopted long-term operation plan. So they're not going to do a new EIS, and that opens up a whole another set of issues and potential for litigation and things. But that said, the state agencies, including DWR, the State Water Board, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife, they sent letters to Reclamation expressing some significant concerns with the new plan. So district staff, EBMUD staff, are actually evaluating the new ROD for the potential impacts to water supply, operations, and our fisheries. At those impacts and modeling those now. There's some preliminary feedback that they shared with our office and some concerns, which we're monitoring because we want to see if any of that gets rolled into any kind of supportive legislation or funding or things that could kind of lock these things in. So we're just monitoring for those things, but some of the issues that may come up, there could be potential impacts to availability of Central Valley Project water supplies, particularly in drought years. I don't think we're going to be in that situation in this coming year because of the nature of our reservoirs at the moment. It could also result in a decrease in Chinook salmon returns in the fall if the Bureau shifts its operations of the cross-channel gates. I don't know how much you know about those gates, but they're a system that is in place to control fresh water in the Bay Delta when they are moving water. And we coordinate with the Bureau on the operations of those gates when we're releasing the fall pulses to bring back McCollumney origin Chinook salmon back to our river. And if we don't have that kind of coordination, those fish may stray up the Sacramento River. They could also increase spring diversions in March and May, and that could potentially have negative impacts on juvenile Central Valley steelhead. And also fall run Chinook smolts that are trying to migrate downstream out to the ocean at that time. And then that increased pumping during that migration could increase the losses of those fish at the South Delta pumping facilities. So the other change, which I mentioned, was, it could affect the State Water Board process to update the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan, because we do support the Healthy Rivers and Landscapes option. By increasing the flows to the delta above a set baseline that's been baked into the evaluation of those alternatives under the Water Quality Control Plan update, it creates uncertainty for all of the parties and for the State Board in their evaluation. So these issues are important issues. They are things that we want to have greater understanding of and be able to communicate to our delegation, and keep an eye out, if there is any legislation introduced that is Western water legislation, as Eric had pointed out, or other actions that the Bureau may take, and be able to convey that to our delegation so they're aware of our concerns and our desires to protect our water supply as well as the McCollum River fishery. The other thing, so essentially what we're going to do, and I'll just sort of talk specifically about the action items, we'll make sure that any future legislation, including the WIN Act authorization, which Eric mentioned, Senator Badilla has an interest in a bipartisan package to reauthorize WIN, and WIN is basically creating an investment plan for investments in infrastructure, but it could also carry policy. So the things we'll focus on is protecting our water supply and preserving access to water transfers and CVP contract supplies, protecting the McCollum River fishery, and ensuring that any policy or program revisions or other activities that could affect the fisheries migration, we actually require that there be mitigation for those impacts. Work with other municipal and industrial CVP contractors to safeguard CVP supplies and support the municipal and industrial contracts themselves. Protect our regional water supply programs, including the Freeport Regional Water Project. Monitor the development of any there could be separate Delta-related legislation and administration policies, and communicate those needs and perspectives on such efforts to our delegation. And then monitor any federal reductions in force for the Bureau of Reclamation, as well as other federal agencies, because that can also have impacts on the operation of the projects. The flip side of that is it also could impact the ability of the reclamation to actually execute these new actions in their new record of decision. So it can go both ways. And we'll continue to monitor those and any other developments. We have seen we were just looking at the numbers, a significant decrease in the numbers of staff at the Bureau of Reclamation. It's gone down 30% nationwide. There could be more of those, and we'll continue to monitor for that and the impacts to California. And I don't know how California will respond to that. And generally speaking, I just want to say, in terms of federal reductions in force, we are monitoring that across all agencies. I know that recently there was a report that FEMA was looking at reducing and making cuts to another 10,000 employees nationwide. They've initially put out a notice to let go of 1,000 contractors who provide temporary support, but more of that could come, and we'll continue to monitor that, and we'll actually see how the state of California responds, because they have been trying to sort of step in and backfill, but we're very reliant, on those types of positions.
There hasn't been a suit filed on that?
On the FEMA reductions in force? Or
on the FEMA core reduction?
Not that I'm aware of. It just was recently announced, and it was just initially for the first 1,000. So, but I don't know in terms of the funding that's for California in response to the wildfires. I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
So any questions about this particular priority? It's a lot to digest. It's a very complicated system to operate, but we're doing our best to sort of try to understand the implications of some of these changes. Okay, no questions? All right, I'm going to move on to water quality. I think Eric did a really nice job of summarizing kind of what are the water quality issues that we're really focused on. We certainly expected when the Trump administration came in, and then we had, a Republican Congress, that they were going to undertake really a comprehensive review of water quality issues. I think there have been cuts, significant cuts too, at the Environmental Protection Agency, and they've seen a shrink in their workforce and reduced enforcement and cancellation of critical environmental grants, and dismantling of a lot of the scientific research that's been very important to the nation and the state of California. And California has been responding to that on some very specific cases. through lawsuits, and then even adopting independent regulations like our clean, the new clean car rules, and doubling down on kind of California's initiatives. But I would say with respect to kind of water quality and what is going on in water quality, there are concerns that the EPA could rescind some of our authorities under the Clean Water Act. And so if that were to happen, we would sort of see how California responds. But we have very strong laws in the state of California under the Porter Cologne Act and other things that I think the state would quickly respond to provide a backstop to some of those things. I think the place where there is an opportunity for maybe a path forwards for some bipartisanship on addressing an issue, which is really important to the district, is on PFAS. And I think Eric did a really nice job of pointing that out, and whether or not we will see a bipartisan bill, and that's probably not likely to present as an opportunity until after the midterm elections and during the lame duck. So we'll keep an eye out for that and look to that as a way of sort of addressing that impact to passive receivers, to provide protections for passive receivers like the water agencies, but also to stick to what are the priorities for the district around polluter pays, to hold those parties that are accountable for the PFAS pollution to mitigate those impacts. And I think that's something that's very important to our delegation as well, which we've heard them talk about in these hearings that was mentioned by Eric. So that is one of the areas we'll continue to seek federal assistance, if there's funding that's approved through any of these acts that need to be reauthorized that could help cover and defray the costs of PFAS contamination or treatment, that whether that benefits us or the state of California, we'll certainly keep an eye on those, and if opportunities present, bring those to you. And just generally, communicate to our delegation, what's important to us around water quality related to other contaminants of concern, new contaminants that may be emerging like microplastics and others in that field. So any questions about water quality? Okay. So lastly, I'm just going to move on to federal funding assistance. So last year, we sort of shared with you that the future for federal funding was uncertain. And as Eric had pointed out, we have been very successful through congressionally directed funding, otherwise known as earmarks or community development projects. That's another term that they use. We have been able to secure over $6 million or maybe $6.4 million through 2 requests for our recycled water project. The East Bay Shore project that's looking at putting an estuary crossing to bring recycled water out to Alameda. And that project is in partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers. We've signed a partnership agreement with them, and they are executing the work with us to do the planning and design. Unfortunately, when there was the government shutdown, we learned that the Army Corps of Engineers, and from the direction of the Trump administration, paused $11 million in core projects across a dozen states, including California, and we have not yet received notice from them, now that we're out of the shutdown, to resume the project. So we're continuing to outreach through our contacts here in California, and then we'll make a decision about how we respond in DC and trying to find out when those funds will be released. It's not having a significant material impact on us at the moment. It's just disconcerting when these things are sort of arbitrarily, there's a pause and we don't understand when this was actually an appropriation. Eric has assured us because this was done through Congress as an appropriation, that money cannot go away per se. They can't claw that money back like they do with reconciliation programs. That money is there into the future. It's just we want to know when work will start back up.
And there's no indication that East Bay MUD's being singled out in any of this. This is across the board.
It's across the board.
Chaos.
Yeah.
Right?
This was $11 million across 12 states, which we were part of that because we were a core project. As Eric had also mentioned, there could be continued funding opportunities at the creation or authorization, I should say. I don't know that there would be funding immediately, but there would be the reauthorization of a federal low-income household assistance program, which is an important priority for the district that can complement our existing customer assistance program. So if a bipartisan bill gets moved forward, which I know is of interest to Senator Padilla, we would bring that to you and be supportive. There was a bill that was introduced in the House to establish a permanent program, and we're monitoring that. And then we'll always and continue to sort of monitor if there's any opportunities for additional funding or policy to support, the forest and watershed health efforts in the Upper McCollum watershed. And we would do that through our partnership with UMRA. So those are some of the areas we're looking. We don't know whether we would be pursuing. It's unlikely that we would be going after another congressionally directed spending opportunity because of the pause in the project right now. It doesn't seem like now and this year is necessarily the right time to go after another earmark, but we continue to see whether or not there's a window of opportunity, and we would be ready to act upon that if it were appropriate, and we'll keep you informed on that. So any questions about all of this? So those are really the three sort of focus areas for us where we'll continue to focus. As my foot gets better, we'll be able to tap dance faster if we need to pivot in another direction. But I just want to say again how much I value Eric's support and what he does for us and maintains those relationships with our delegation, because I think we're uniquely positioned that way.
Thank you so much. Yeah, board discussion, Director Lewis.
Thank you for both your presentations. And my questions may be a tag team effort. Given our traditional, departments or agencies that kind of supported water quality efforts, EPA, FDA, CDC, HHS, and the way in which they've been impacted, along with tracking what the administrative priorities might be and how they're changing, are we keeping an eye on what other groups that might be lobbying, that might benefit, whether it be food manufacturers, other folks that reduced costs and lowering the quality standards might be cheaper. And if they're going after or pushing any of that. And like I said, we don't have these traditional agencies pushing back against that.
Yeah, those are really good questions. I'm certain, Eric, to the extent, there's lots of different associations out
Right.
there, and these interest groups that may have an interest in more relaxed regulations. That is even true under the PFAS regulations, right? If you provide a third-party liability protection, does that leave the manufacturers of those PFAS chemicals off the hook? And so how is that gonna play out in Congress?
And do they get more attention than
Do they get
would have in the past?
Yeah, so I think that's why we have Eric. And to keep track of some of those opportunities. But we do work through our associations.
So let me give you a sort of a real-life example that answers your question. So the American Chemistry Council, from trade associations, individual advocates of public water agencies, we've been pushing for source control, product substitution, for example. American Chemistry Council doesn't like that because it's a slippery slope as they see it. Once you start doing this on this chemical, down the road, it's another chemical, right? Irrespective of whether that's right or wrong. So yes, we do work with folks to try, if not mitigate, totally shut down those kind of efforts. Similarly on, for example, biosolids management issues, working with the Farm Bureau, working with the state folks, working with ECOS, the Environmental Council of the States, to ensure that if there are changes to the way biosolids are managed, that they're done based on science and public health data that makes sense, not that it's just fabricated, right? So yes, we're working with folks like that.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts from my fellow board members? I do have one quick question having to do with folks who represent our upcountry and watershed area, and to what extent we're, maintaining relationships with them as well, and like the U.S. Forest Service and any forest health projects and things like that. I'm curious about how things are going in that department.
So a lot of that we do through UMRA because of our partnership and involvement in UMRA. I would think what is happening with the Forest Service, and in fact, one of the partners in Eric's firm, David, tracks a lot of that for us and engages with them and provides information to us that we then relay to UMRA. So we do that level of coordination with them.
Great, thank you. So with that, we'll move on to public comment. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment on item 10? Online in the audience?
No public comment?
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to item 11, which is to,
No.
no, not yet? Oh, sorry, we have to accept.
We
Sorry.
have to accept it.
We need a motion to accept this legislative report.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions?
And I have one more item to do,
Oh, you
which is
do?
the second part of the legislative updates. I just do a quick update of other issues of interest to EBMUD. So I just want to run through this very briefly. You all probably know the California legislature reconvened for the second year of their two-year session on January 5th. And the Senate had a swearing-in ceremony for the new President Pro Tem, Monique Limon, who is from Santa Barbara, and she is the first Latina and mother to hold that position. On Thursday, the governor, last Thursday, gave his final State of the State address to a joint session of the legislature, and he was really focused on drawing sort of the sharp contrast between California and the federal government. And that is for reasons you all are aware that he's interested in higher level office in the future. And then on Friday, the governor's director of finance released the governor's proposed 2026 budget. And it's a proposed $349 billion spending plan. It's mostly a status quo budget with no big cuts and no big new programs. The governor is projecting a $2.9 billion shortfall between expenditures and revenues, and that they will close that shortfall or deficit basically by delaying deposits or truing up into this state rainy day fund that was taken out from last year. So that's how they're going to make it up. This actual projection is different from where the Legislative Analyst Office was several weeks back. They've been talking about a proposed deficit closer to $18 billion, but that's because the LAO took a more conservative approach to revenues, reporting that they anticipated a turndown in the stock market, which, as you know, it's capital gains and those taxes that are really funding the state and our general fund revenues. So of categories that were in the governor's proposed budget of interest to EBMUD, there's some funding in there for the Department of Resources for river forecasting and snow surveys. There's $14 million for Delta levy programs. And then it also allocates about $2.1 billion of the climate bond for safe drinking water, flood control and water resilience, wildfire and forest resilience, coastal resiliency, and some other biodiversity and nature-based solutions, and clean energy. They also included in the governor's proposed budget an investment plan for cap and trade, or cap and invest, that was formerly known as the GGRF. And that expenditure plan continues funding for the safe and affordable drinking water program that is addressing a lot of the disadvantaged communities that don't have clean water in parts of our state. And it also had funding for high-speed rail, which continues to be a priority for the governor. There was no new funding for workforce retraining for displaced oil and gas workers. We were looking out for that, but we didn't see any new funding. And just to remind you all, this is the governor's opening proposal for the legislature. They will start to have sort of oversight hearings now to review what is being proposed. And then the real action will begin in May when the governor puts out a revised budget based on new revenue information. So it's just kicking off. So it's anticipated to be a very busy year, and it'll be interesting to see. It's the last year of this governor's term. We have midterm elections, and we also have a really difficult budget situation to deal with. So we'll keep you informed on all of that. All right, any questions?
Okay. So do we need to do and accept this portion? We're good?
Just
Okay.
information. Thank you
So
very
thank you so much,
Yes.
Kathy and Eric. We really appreciate what you do on our behalf with all of our partners in Sacramento and in Washington. So thank you so very much. Do I have to ask for public comment on this last little item? No. Okay, very good. So now we get to move on to item 11. And this is to consider and approve an increase to the Board of Directors' salary by an amount not to exceed 5% annually effective February 1st of this year. And we will have the general manager walk us through this for.
Yes, thank you, President Gomez. So just as a reminder, each year, the board may consider and vote on adjustments to your compensation. The MUD Act allows an annual increase, as President Gomez just mentioned, of up to 5% in the Board of Directors' salary for each calendar year following the effective date of the last adjustment. And the last time the board increased their salary was January of 2024. Therefore, the board may increase their salary for 2025 and 2026. Also to note that any adjustment would be prospective only, so there is no retroactive pay for the board. The BD1 outlines several options for the board to consider. I'll just quickly walk through those options. You can increase your salary for 2025 by 5% and 2026 by 5% for a compounded total increase of 10.25%. You can choose to increase your salary by up to 5% for 2026 only. Or you could increase your salary based on the general salary increase received by district staff for the past 2 years, which was 3.4% and 3.7%, and that will be a compounded total of 7.23%. And of course, you can choose a different increase so long as it's not more than 5% per year. And so with that, I certainly can open up to the board for options.
Director Young?
Yeah, I'd like to propose that we consider option 3, which is to match the general salary increase that was authorized in the contracts.
Thank you, Director Young. Any other thoughts or proposals from the board?
In the staff memo, that's option C.
Option
Yes,
C,
C,
yes.
option C. And I'd make a motion in that regard. It's no further discussion.
So we have a motion, and is there any further discussion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. So we can just go ahead and have a roll call.
You can have a voice
other
vote, but for the record, we want to just note for the public who may not have seen the staff report that the board is voting to approve a 3.4% increase for 2025 and an additional 3.7% increase in 2026, resulting in a compounded total increase of 7.23%. And that's what the vote is for.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second, and we need another comment?
I apologize. I would just like a roll call for it, vote as opposed to a voice vote.
Okay.
And would we want to do public comment before we vote?
Usually.
So do we have any public comment on this item?
We have no public comment online
Okay.
and no public comment in the audience.
Okay, so we will do then a roll call vote. Oh, Director Lewis.
So just so the public knows then, for the proposed 2025, that's for basically for 1 month, correct?
No, so again, there's no retroactive pay for the
Right.
board. So you're voting on just going forward that your increase will be if you do vote for item C, 7.23% increase to your monthly salary, but only going forward.
Only going forward. But I guess I wanted the public to know it will not, because it's not retroactive, it's not like we're going to get that increase that might have been in place.
Yeah, we're not getting it retroactive our staff got a retroactive increase. We are not taking a retroactive. We're just recognizing the increase that was made to staff in last year. We didn't make one. We didn't vote ourselves an increase last year. And so, we're wrapping that into the going
You're
forward
moving forward, yes.
increase of 3.7%.
Thank you. So if no more discussion by our board, I would like to do a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Director Chan?
No.
Director Gomez?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes,
Director Odie?
Abstain.
Director Smith?
Aye.
Director Young?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. So now we can move on to agenda item 12, the general manager's report.
Yeah, so we're going to begin with the water supply update, and, with the start of the new year, you start getting your water supply updates, and we have Roberto Cortez, our manager of water operations, to provide today's update.
One moment, Roberto.
Congratulations, President Gomez, Vice President Lewis. Good afternoon to all the board members.
Okay. Good afternoon. Today I'll be presenting the first water supply update of the year. Quickly, we're going to talk about what water year 25 looked like, what our current supply is, and what our projections are for the rest of the water year.
Bless you.
So this table here shows us how we ended water year 25. Overall, our rain totals and our snow totals were below average. Our runoff was below average as well. But despite that, we did end up with just about a full system at the end of September. And that's that scenario for a wet prior couple years. So 24 and 23 were good years. And so we started at a good, healthy storage levels. And despite lower than average hydrology, we ended up in a good point. What does our current supply look like? The red line here on the graph is our current production. It's interesting to note, and I think Chairman Manager Chan had noted that we had some really low demand months this summer, unusually low. And you could see, especially here in October, how the red line compares to other years. And so we are trending lower than our forecasted demands, and that's shown here in our graph. Storage-wise, pretty healthy so far. I think we all know that the last part of December and early part of January were fairly wet. We got a good series of storms that brought to us a good amount of rain and snowfall upcountry. And so right now, our total system storage is at 114% of average and 83% of capacity. This is an illustration of what December and January looked like. As you can see that between the last part of December, early part of January, we received almost 9 inches of rain. So far, as of January 7th, our East Bay totals are 12.1 inches or 109% of average on precipitation. Upcountry, December, as you can see, was really wet, over 9 inches, and that was primarily in the last part of December. So it's pretty amazing how much we received during that time. Currently, we sit about 25 inches of rain or 129% of average. The following graph that you see in front of you is our snowpack at Cape Wolf Lake. What's interesting to note is the red line is our current year. You'll notice that we were at 0 in terms of snowpack. But those couple series of storms in late December, we went from about 0 to over 40 inches of snow. So pretty amazing over a few days. And then we received a little bit more in early January. However, it's been fairly dry since then. And right now, the forecast shows that we are going to continue a dry pattern for at least 10 days. There is some rain in the forecast showing up after 10 days. It's a little too early to tell or too far out to really confirm whether that's going to materialize or not. But I think the bottom line is that while we did get a good amount of rain, we're still, it's not enough, right? We need more rain, more snow. It's early in the season, and so we don't want that to stop right now. This is a map of the California snowpack. The Central Sierra is, as of January 7th, was sitting at 89% of average on the snow water content. That's very similar to where we are. We're about 86%. So we're very close to that. This map is of the United States. It's a good reference to use. It's a 3-month seasonal precipitation outlook. We're in that white zone. Basically means that there's a forecast of average rainfall for the next 3 months. So even though it's fairly dry, there is some chance that will be average for the next 3 months. This is a projected precipitation for the rest of the year. The black line is our current McCollum precipitation total. And the red, green, and blue show 3 types of hydrological scenarios that may occur. A dry scenario puts us at about 40 inches total, and a median scenario puts us at about 50 inches of total. And as you can see, that's why I said that it's too early to feel like our water supply is going to be healthy at the end of the year, because we still need about at least 15 inches more to achieve a dry scenario, and even more for a median scenario. What does that mean for the end of the season storage? The black line is the current total storage in our system. In a dry scenario, meaning that if we get at least 15 more inches of rain in the McCollum, we will end up with 585,000 acre-feet in total system storage across the district. That's lower than a full system, but as you can see, it's higher than a drought scenario.
Does the decrease mean showing in January, February, is that releases out of
Correct.
our system?
Primarily, right, to get it back
Make
into
room, make sure that we have
flood
adequate
control space.
capacity.
Right. And the median and wet scenario, in that case, we would refill our system at the end of September. So more rain, more snow, that's what we're looking for. And that's it.
Thank you, Roberto. Any questions?
Yeah.
Director Young?
I'm curious about these, basically the rivers, when they come in and go, in terms of the Caples Lake graph, do those long periods of dry, especially, if it's warmer than normal, how are you all thinking about how that impacts the, sort of the graph? Because some of that water ends up, base flow, some of it ends up, a lot of it can end up evaporating.
A lot of it also
And a lot of it
is-
runs down into Pardee and out of our system before we have a need for it, really, or
Correct.
the ability to use it. So, do you have,
I mean, it's hard to tell, but generally, there's a few other reservoirs upstream of us that do capture some of this runoff. PG&E has a few reservoirs that will capture some of this water before it reaches us. And to maintain flood control space, we do have to release water. So, some of it will be
if you go back, could you go back to the slide that has the snow level, goes back near the beginning? This one. So if you go, if you follow our red line right now,
Right.
we're at, basically no snowpack to a ton, to, 40, and then how far, I don't know. I'll be very curious. It seems like the graph is changing over time in a way that's less predictable and more volatile.
Yeah, and maybe I'll add, and Roberto, feel free to jump in, but, as we look at the snow water content, I mean, Caples Lake just happens to be around 8,000 feet. It's not actually technically even in our watershed, but
Right.
it's very representative of our watershed. When Roberto and his staff look at this, they also look at other snow stations at, at mid and lower elevation when we make our projections going forward. I will say, when we've been looking at the data, in terms of how the April 1st snow content has changed over time, we're seeing probably more noticeable changes at the mid elevations and low elevations, where we're seeing less snow over time. At the higher elevations, so far that's been holding pretty well. But, in terms of looking at our projections, like, what do we think that runoff will be? That's just one of many stations that they look at when they make their projections going forward. And I think that's similar to what the state does as well.
Thank you. Yeah, Director Lewis.
I want to follow up on Ruth's question. I mean, it's almost like we have historic averages, and then we have what's becoming a more realistic average. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to get a handle on. What is this really potentially looking like going forward?
Yeah, and you're talking in terms of climate change potentially, is that what, yeah. And it's information that we continue to look at and evaluate. There's a lot, like Joe Manderchan said, there's a lot of instrumentation out there. And we're constantly looking at that, evaluating, and taking into consideration into our modeling. And as things are changing, we're adapting to that.
Yeah, and I'll also add, at the next board meeting, we're going to have our urban water management plan workshop, and we're also going to share with you how we are going to be looking at climate change. It's a longer study, and it won't be fully incorporated until, not the plan that's going to be issued this year, but the next plan of how it's looking at our water supply, our water demand, what that drought planning sequence will look like. So there's a lot of things to look at with respect to climate change that we're doing right now.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Roberto.
Thank you.
Much appreciate it.
Thank you,
Okay.
Roberto.
Chair Ledger.
Yes, so also in your packet is a monthly report. I'll just highlight a few things I've been highlighting for the past few board meetings in terms of our consumption and revenue. So billed consumption through December is 4.9% less than last year. So that's not great, but we do budget conservatively. And our revenue to date is only 1.8% less than budget. Now, that's not the side that I'd like to be on, but I'll say if you look at the previous months, we were 3% below in terms of revenue. So the gap is closing a little bit. We're also looking, and I'm tracking and managing our expenses very carefully. On the water system side, our expenses are below the budget, which is good. On the wastewater side, we're exactly on budget. So all this to say is I'm just going to continue to monitor our expenses, which is something that we can control until I have a better sense of where revenues are coming in. But right now, I think all this is manageable. Also, I just want to highlight the Community Water Academy. The next academy starts in April of this year. Applications opened yesterday. They close on February 20th, and applicants can apply online. There's also a link, if you go to our webpage, under announcements, you'll see a link for people to apply for the Community Water Academy. We did send out emails to notify our customers about the academy, and are also doing targeted outreach to community partners and local nonprofit organizations. Our goal is to have about 35 applicants, and then the applicants will be notified on March 13th. We'll also provide an info.
35 applicants.
35 participants for the Community Water Academy, many more applicants, sorry. An info memo will be sent to you this week with more information about this year's Community Water Academy. And I also just ask that if you have suggestions for people you think should apply, please reach out to them or let us know, and we'll reach out to those people as well. And that's the end of my reports on the monthly report. If there are any questions, I'll just move on to the last couple of items.
Questions? Okay.
And we can post the link to people for the Water Academy on our socials, right?
We can share.
That's a good
I would say, and I'll look to Eric, but I would say if you just want to say, here's a link to apply to the Community Water Academy, that should be fine.
Providing information.
Don't like each other's posts.
But I don't know if I like it.
And, yeah, and it's very popular. I just saw a note from Kelly. Again, we've only opened it yesterday, and we already have 100 applications.
Wow.
So it has proven to be popular over the years.
Sounds like we need more than one a year.
We know that's been the request from the board. I'm just looking at staff capacity as well, so.
So good.
Any other questions about the monthly report?
Yeah, I'm just curious, how diverse is it amongst all our wards that have participated or at least filled out the application? Some folks might not know.
Yeah, and I think that's one where we can look for support from the board. I mean, we try to get fairly equal representation, amongst each ward. We also look for just general diversity within the group, and I think these are areas that support from the board can help out with.
Thank you.
Okay. In your packet is the 2025 interdepartmental committees. that summarizes the activities and accomplishments for the 6 interdepartmental committees. And just as a reminder, those committees are the Art Committee, the Diversity, the Contract Equity, the Pipe Sustainability, and Water Quality Committee. So you can read about the activities of those committees in 2025. And then at your places is the Speakers Bureau. And that's the end of my reports.
Thank you so much, General Manager Chan. Excellent report as always. And we move on to item number 13, which is items for future consideration. So please submit any items for future consideration to myself and to the General Manager, if you have any. And, but if anybody would like to speak up about any items, this would be a good time to do it. Or you could just send it if you do. And then item number 14 would be director comments. Any director comments that folks would like to share? Anything that happened in December until now? Okay, Director Odie.
I had one, and because of being out of town and missing the comments last time, I did attend, this was just way back in November, the neighbors meeting, and we spent a lot of time talking about the area center. I just want to say, I mean, there were some pointed questions, kind of an approach I wouldn't have taken, but I really want to give a shout out to Mona, who handled everything amazingly, and we are really lucky to have her and her team as part of so thank you, Mona.
Thank you. Any other director reports?
Yeah, I do.
Director Young?
A couple of items, actually, there. Before the break, I attended, as did Clifford, the open house for the Siesta Valley Bowl, which is the new name for Cal Shakes. It was extraordinarily well attended. It was a cold and foggy and drippy day, so much so that we were going to go to the train lights thing afterwards, but everybody was way too cold to do it. But it was very well attended, lots of excitement about the upcoming season. I'm going to be, as folks know, I'm on board. First board meeting is tomorrow, and I will, report on that at our next meeting. I am also doing, Joe, what's the name of the organization? Sons of Retirement Brenda presentation tomorrow.
Other director reports?
S-O-N or S-U-N?
Huh?
S-O-N or S-U-N? Okay.
New organization. No, it's not.
Cats.
Also, before the break, I attended the State of the City address and received, on behalf of the district, a commendation for our support for their 4th of July celebration, and had also, in a separate event, presented about the district's regular programs and activities to the League of Women Voters for Berkeley, Albany, and Reville.
Great, thank you so much. Other reports? I have a brief report. On December 12th, I attended the Alameda County Mayor's Conference in Dublin. And on December 15th, I attended and presented at the Pleasant Hill City Council meeting along with my fellow board member from Contra Costa Water District, and received. And thank you, Joe, for all of your help with that. And this coming week, I will be presenting in San Ramon to the American Association of University Women. And I will be highlighting work we do to promote women businesses and to promote women careers at the EBMUD. So thank you again for all your assistance with that. And if there are no other director comments or reports, then we can adjourn the meeting. And thank you very much. Is that right? Okay.
You got to bang the gavel.
Ha! First official.